Hello everyone, welcome to my review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 7. Finally got the chance to record this review. I found it really hard to prepare for this one actually. I do tend to actually struggle to get all my notes together and stuff for these reviews. I always find that the hardest part actually. So finally I've managed to push through that and actually get to the point where I can record it. But yeah, it's also strange knowing that this is like my last Buffy review. It's kind of become very much an in-joke at this point, you know, in the community we've kind of built up over the past couple of years, and on the Discord as well. You know, making the meme of, oh, how long's the review for this season going to be? And the fact that those are kind of coming to an end, considering even after this one there's only one more review for Angel Season 5, and then that's that. It's kind of crazy. The character development of the reviews is even quite something. The Season 1 review was like 45 minutes or something, and who knows how long this one's going to be. Lots to talk about, you know, since it's the final season and everything. But granted, I did realise when I was like putting notes together, I don't have to make any predictions for next season. So that shaves off like 10-15 minutes off the runtime anyway, so you're welcome. I've saved you some time by there not being another season after this, at least not a live action season. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about this season, really delve into my thoughts. I've made notes, I've rewatched some parts of my other reactions, I've rewatched some scenes from some episodes to try and infer some thoughts and get an idea of some themes and some of my favourite moments, some of my favourite episodes, stuff like that, as I always tend to prepare for these reviews. And the moment is here. Yeah, I'm really excited for this, hopefully you guys are as well. It's been like 3-ish weeks, I think, since I finished the show. It's been a manic time. I'm moving house currently, so we need to pack stuff away, and yeah, it's been a mental kind of thing. So I don't know if this review, I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually have time to film it all in one go or not. I'm going to try my best, but if not, it might be a bit of a mix and match of where exactly I'm recording it and when, etc. But it's fine. Anyway, I suppose we should just get right into it. As always with these reviews, we're going to follow the same kind of format. So first I'm going to talk about my general thoughts, observations and discussions about the season as a whole. Then I'm going to revisit my predictions that I made about Season 7 at the end of my Season 6 review. Then we're going to do some character studies, talk about, you know, the main characters and some of the secondary characters this season that I thought were worthy of noting, and just, you know, dive into them a bit, explain my thoughts on them. Then we're going to talk about the themes that I picked up on personally from Season 7, with some examples of them. Then we're going to get into the favourite episodes, one of my favourite sections of these reviews to do. I have counted and verified all the votes that you guys sent in, so thank you in advance to everyone who did that on my community tab post. So we're going to go through favourite episodes as voted for by all of you guys on that post, and then we're going to do my top 5 episodes as well of Season 7 to round it off. And then obviously normally there would be a 6th section to this where I predict what's going to happen next season, but don't need to do that this time, so there we go. Yeah, so I guess that is everything we need to know before we head into the Season 7 review. Again, all my opinions, it's not fact. I'm not saying this exactly what you should think. I'm not saying this is going to be my opinion on all these things that I'm going to mention forever. That's obviously going to be subject to change, but I'm excited to kind of get through this review, bring a proper ending to Buffy on my channel reaction wise, and then I can like do rewatches and stuff, and from there more content can kind of spawn, just, you know, a bit different to the reactions that have kind of carried me through the past 3 years of Buffy. So yes, I think that's going to be everything that we need to set up for the review, so let's dive right in. So as always, we're going to start off with my general thoughts and observations and discussion about just the whole season as a complete thing, without getting into too specific of you know, analysis, etc. I've got my notebook right in front of me, so if I'm looking down going that's what I'm looking at. I'm not just going for no reason, although, you know, if I feel like I want to go then I goddamn will. Probably won't. I'll do my best, I promise. But yes, I thought overall Season 7 was a really solid final season. I think, you know, I don't always like comparing seasons per se, unless I'm saying something nice, because I just like to be positive more so than not. But I do feel like, it's not like my favourite season. It's not my least favourite season either. But I do feel like, as a conclusion to the show, I think season 7 is wonderful and really, really well done. If this had just been like another season and then the story goes on like another like live action season 8 or something, I'd have been like, yeah, this is, it's a fun side season. Maybe not as much groundbreaking stuff in it, but still a really good fun ride. And it was actually surprising getting into the season to see how controversial it almost was, in a way. I feel like, a lot of people talked about season 4 around the time I started the show, being like, oh yeah, that's my least favourite season, just push through that and you'll be fine. But after that, I think season 7 got the most like negativity around it. So that was interesting to kind of approach it. Although I wasn't really too aware of the negativity until I actually had started the season, I think. I had a few people kind of let me know that they didn't enjoy the season before I started, which is odd of them to message me that, but you do you. But either way, personally, from where I'm quite literally sitting, I really enjoyed season 7 overall. I thought it was a really fun, interesting ride. I think the core themes of the season, more so than a lot of seasons I can remember, really carried it through, and really paid off in a very satisfying way. At least the themes I kind of picked up on in the season, I thought they did a really fantastic job at kind of rolling with them and creating some really interesting, fun stories with them. Some powerful ones as well, some powerful notes in there. Some really lovely scenes throughout the whole season, even if they weren't in like my favourite episodes. There's some really lovely scenes that kind of I thought played into some key themes this season really nicely. So I loved everything with that. I thought it wrapped up all the arcs of a lot of these main characters and the overall kind of story of the show in a very satisfying way. I think they did a great job with that. The ones they absolutely needed to nail, I think, were, kind of a feeling of an overall completion to this story across 7 seasons, which I think they did, and to Buffy's character arc as well. She's the titular character. They need to get her right, and I think the ending of her story and her arc in particular was a real highlight of this season for me, and I think they did a fantastic job with that as well. So the core elements I needed from a final season, a satisfying ending to both the story and to the main character and main characters, because I like how they ended basically every arc of all the main characters, and we've kind of we've come to know across 7 seasons. I think they wrapped all that up really well and succeeded in what season 7 absolutely needed to do, for me anyway as a viewer, because not every ending's going to be perfect, and I've been burned by a few bad endings to shows recently, and I'm glad. I was really, really scared that I wasn't going to like Buffy's ending. We'll come on to that very soon in my predictions actually, but I was like, what if I don't like it after all this? It's going to be such a bummer. Thankfully that wasn't the case, and I really loved how they ended things off, and I think sometimes with some shows in their final seasons, right from the off it gets the feeling like, okay, this is definitely wrapping up. You get that sense. And then other shows, it's kind of the last few episodes, you're like, okay, yeah, now this feels like it's actually ending, whereas the rest of the season prior to that maybe just felt like, oh yes, the same old stuff, and we're just having a good time. And looking back, I do feel like they really hit okay, this is our final stand here, right from the off, with all the big bads making those cameos as in the first episode. I said first a lot then. But for me, it was definitely very much the last couple of episodes. I was like, yeah, this is coming to an end. Everyone's getting in this big conflict with all these inner conflicts, just to make it seem like all is lost. And talking about this final stand and the fact that Sunnydale was like doomed, all of that stuff. And I don't actually know which approach I prefer when I think about a final season. I think it does depend on how many episodes it is. Since Buffy is quite a chunky show with like 22 episodes in most of the seasons, I think that would have felt very overly long if it was like right from the off, this is the end, this is the final season, we are wrapping things up. Because it would have felt like a very long farewell then, and I'd have been like, oh my god, like, is it ending? Like, get on with it. So I think that would have been an odd approach for like a 22 episode season, for example. Then you get like Game of Thrones season 8, for example, which is only 6 episodes and rushed, I can say. But I feel like this final season really took its time with approaching an ending to the show. You know, it wasn't like every episode needs to be super plot heavy and super important, but we did get good stuff in each one, and we could have, you know, a more really character focused episode, like Same Time Same Place, for instance. I feel like that was, you know, a hugely important episode for Willow, as there was The Killer in Me. And then you have more kind of fun, chaotic episodes, I guess, like Him was. And Storyteller was something a bit different, but it also did further Andrew's arc as a character, if not like the overall plot with the first and stuff. So I think they still could have a bit of fun with it, and there's a bit of leeway, and that just shows they weren't like entirely, we must focus this season and make sure everyone knows this is the end. I think people knew going into this one that it was going to be the last season. I think, at least like the cast and crew, I think, knew. I don't know if the audience knew. You have to let me know, but I feel like maybe they did know. Who can say? Well, you can say. That's why I just asked you. Shut up, Liam. What are you talking about? But yeah, I really like how they wrapped up everything with this season and how they treated the finality of it being the last season as well. I thought that was very well handled. And I think I kind of thought about this when I watched some of my reactions back. Normally, when I like try and come up with my top 5 episodes, I'll go right to the end of the reaction and the start of my afterthoughts to see what my vibe is, and like the first thing I say after I finish the episode, because then I can really get a sense like, okay, that was really a bloody good episode. That's probably going to be a contender for my top 5. I seem really, really hyped here. And then I go back and actually, you know, watch clips from the episodes and stuff to try and work out more clear ranking. Although I really struggled this season, I must say. And then, yeah, when I was watching those afterthoughts this season, a lot of the time it was like, yeah, it's another good episode, and that happened a lot this season. There weren't many when I was like, oh my god, that was insane. You know, it wasn't like The Body or Once More Levels with Feeling. What the hell? Once More with Feeling levels of you know, gut reactions to those episodes airing for me. So I do feel like a lot of the season was very middle of the road, like solid stuff, but maybe didn't kind of, like previous seasons did, maybe really have some proper special episodes in there for the most part. Not that there weren't, because we will get onto the fact that there were some very kind of unique special episodes this season. But I feel like the absolute like highs of the show that other seasons, I think basically every other season achieved, I don't think we quite got that with this season, aside from maybe 1 or 2 occasions, but certainly not as many for me as previous seasons. Because even like season 4, which wasn't like my favourite season of all, you know, and I do prefer season 7 to season 4, I would say, you know, that still had Hush, you know, that had New Moon Rising, which was a really, really emotive, powerful episode for me personally. That really connected with me because obviously the Willow and Oz stuff I really enjoyed, and the Tara stuff I really enjoyed. I was very invested in those characters and that pairing and everything. And then it also had Restless right at the end, which I can't wait to rewatch and really unpack, and that's such a special thing to so many fans as well. I feel like I didn't quite have as much of that oomph from this season. And again, not that it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, because I think season 4 also had some lower lows for me, in terms of like the quality of the episodes, Where the Wild Things Are, looking at you, and just like, oh god, that was painful for me to watch because that just ripped my heart open, like Wild at Heart, for instance. So it's odd to say, and I feel like I have a toxic relationship with this show, because I kind of missed being utterly devastated and utterly wowed on multiple occasions, which I feel like it just wasn't quite there this season. I think a lot of that is just due to where the arc needed to go with the potentials, and focusing on them probably doesn't bloody help, does it? Ironically, you know, a lot of the potential I think was sucked out of this season by the potentials being in it. But regardless, like, we had Chosen, which I thought was a huge high of this season and a great way to end the show, and some really emotional moments and like sobbing my bloody heart out. And then Potential as well, that episode. While it's not like another one of my absolute favourite episodes or anything, I was, in my reaction, I think I just like, yeah, another good episode, I enjoyed it, which I did say for most of the episodes this season. You know, my overall thoughts on the episode might have just been, yeah, that was good, I enjoyed it. It still had one of my favourite moments of the entire season in it, which is Xander talking to Dawn at the end about how extraordinary she is, and the struggle of, you know, them being the two who don't have powers, and they've had to spend all these years watching their friends just get stronger and stronger, and they're just there like, oh, I'm going to read these books and fix some windows and build some shelves now. And I bloody loved that moment, because it reminded me of another one of my favourite Buffy moments, which was Xander talking to Buffy in 401 about, you know, what would Buffy do. I loved that moment, and it felt very much the same vein to me there. So there are so many great moments this season, but I think, you know, the episodes themselves that these great moments featured in as a whole, I feel like just weren't as other seasons were for me. Because I know season 6, controversial as fuck, lots of elements I really didn't like, but most of them I really loved. Season 6, believe it or not, one of my favourite seasons of the show. They went there with it, you know? There were some really great episodes in there. They made a character evil. They introduced like a villain of the season in the trio that I personally wasn't big on. But now that I've seen season 7, and I've seen where ultimately some of that arc led as it continued being explored, I think I can look back and appreciate it. I still feel like they could have done better with the trio, personally. I know some people very much disagree with me, and they have let me know how much they disagree with me. But yeah, I do feel like, you know, season 6 did push the boundaries. I admit, and I will say, I think they went too far at times, and maybe it was a bit too much of pushing it too far. But I do really like remember those standout moments, whereas season 7 I think was just consistently really good and entertaining, but I don't think it really blew my mind, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and 1 or 2 moments in those episodes that were like all consistently really great. And I guess I do have another point before this next one, but I feel like this is a good kind of segue into it. And again, I don't know if this is like for better or worse when I say this, but it's kind of just ties into what I'm saying about like the big moments and the wow not quite being there for a lot of this season. I feel like I think I feel very similar about this to like season 3, although I think I prefer how season 3 did it. For me, there felt like a huge flow to this season in terms of how like the story came together, and how some character moments maybe came together, how all the different plots of individual episodes came together. I feel like it just flowed so nicely and so coherently in terms of like how the story was being told episode to episode, and the overall arc was being kind of explored and explained, once we got the big reveal of the first, particularly. Very much like, you know, the middle part of the season kind of is like one big blur to me. It kind of all just flowed into one. So for me, it was kind of, oh, I really loved this individual moment and this individual moment. These are all really good. What episode were they in? Can't quite remember. And that shows a lot of cohesiveness, I think. So it's kind of like, how do you prefer consuming storytelling like that, I guess? Because it kind of feels like if they all blur together in that way, there's less chance for individual episodes to really stand out, which is how I kind of felt about the season. But it's not really a bad thing that the episodes kind of flow like that, because that just means they're telling the story, you know, cohesively and quite well. Um, but I suppose that kind of limits their experimentation, and maybe that's why I feel like we didn't really have as many like really pushing the boat out episodes this season compared to maybe some previous ones. But yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it. I mean, I'm not saying either way, like, it's bad, it's good. It's just kind of something I noted. But yeah, in comparison to like some other seasons, I feel like it didn't quite have those what the hell moments, like, consistently. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, it just makes it, I guess, more of a chill, relaxed viewing experience until they kick her out of her own bloody house. I mean, that's when you're like, what the hell? And then you get emotional because it's all coming to an end. But up to that point, it's kind of, you know, it just all bleeds together. And I kind of do feel that way in a sense with season 3, in like the second half of that, when things really kick off in Bad Girls onwards. Kind of like, okay, what episode did Angel pretend to be Angelus? What episode was the weird box of spidery things? I can kind of see that, but I do feel like it is a bit more distinct individual episode-wise for me than this was in the middle half of this season. The middle portion of this season. No such thing as a middle half, Liam. So, yeah, and I actually do think it's reflected, that kind of middling part of the season kind of all flowing together in what you guys voted for. Because in terms of like how, you know, your favourite episode that you voted for, your least favourite that you voted for, the middle of the pack of those kind of rankings that you guys did in terms of how you voted is basically the middle portion of the season. So kind of, in a way, I guess that's a physical representation of that. Well, not even physical, is it? But that kind of is an example of my point, I guess, in terms of, you know, in relation to you guys. Because, you know, it's been a collaboration, this kind of reacting experience, you know. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, but obviously we'll get there in about 3 years when we get to that point of the review. So yeah, I don't know if it's like, that's definitely a good thing that I liked about this season, the fact that it can kind of flow together that way and bleed together, or if it's necessarily like, oh, that kind of maybe held it back and it didn't allow, because the episodes had to do certain things and kind of all felt very similar. Nothing really stood out compared to other seasons, maybe. So yes, there was that. Always have to go mentioning the cast, because once again they were all phenomenal throughout this season, consistently great. You know, I think maybe in terms of like emotions and stuff, there weren't as many, like they really need to push themselves here. Apart from, you know, I think James Masters kind of had to do a lot of that for sure as Spike this season, and he kind of brought his A game with it. Sarah Michelle Gellar always is fantastic as Buffy. This season is no exception. She kind of had to go through lots of different emotions as well. So that was good fun. Some people had to play characters just as themselves, and then also play the first as those characters. So that gives them a chance to kind of show off some range a bit and have a bit of fun. So I imagine that was pretty interesting for them to do. But again, there's certainly in the main cast, there's no weak link ever. They're all phenomenal. You know, maybe some were underutilized at times, and maybe didn't get huge standout moments for their characters that previous seasons had offered them. But regardless, I do feel like with what they were given, you know, they did a great job and they all had chances to shine this season. And particularly, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar really carried the big arc with the potential and stuff like she needed to do, because she was the leader for most of the arc and this is her show. So as ever, she was an absolute powerhouse this season, portraying the different kind of shit that Buffy had to go through yet again. But hopefully no more. Give her a bit of a break before the comics, please. Hopefully maybe season 8 is just her going to Disneyland. I'd genuinely be really excited for that if that was the case. But yeah, the cast were wonderful, as they always are. And I also loved, through the villain of this season and what they can do, what they're capable of, I love that, again, it's kind of the very final season feel, because they can bring back so many old characters, just like Faith they brought back, obviously. They tied Robin to one of the Slayers that Spike killed. We had flashbacks like Drusilla and stuff. But with the first, we got to see like all the big bads in years gone by. We got to see them kind of inhabit all these dead characters, much like they did obviously in Amends when they took over. Mal appeared as Jenny, one of the few other people that Angel killed, Angelus killed. But yeah, I like how it feels organic using the first as a villain. I mentioned this, I think it was in my finale reaction. For some reason, like the first being the villain this season, it just feels right. It just sits right with me. I don't know how to explain that feeling, because I didn't know they were going to be the villain until they were revealed as the villain. But as things kind of played out, I don't know, something about it's just like, it just makes sense that the final villain of the show is the first. I guess it's because they weren't entirely explored that much in Amends. They were just like, we're the first evil, and then that was it. We never kind of heard from them again. It's kind of a big deal to be like, we were before everything, and then they never kind of pick up on that. So the fact that they did, I really enjoyed, and that was a lot of fun. But they can inhabit all these dead people and everything. It's a great way of, wrapping up some arcs, like having Faith talk to the mayor again one last time. And yeah, just seeing all these like huge names in the show again from years gone by. In this final season, there's something about it just felt right. So I really loved that, the choice story-wise to have the first be like the big bad this season, and for the final season, the fact they were able to bring back so many characters, even just for like little cameos. We saw the mayor a couple of times. We saw Warren, frankly, too much. Like, go away. Or the first inhabiting them anyway. But the fact that we had Adam for like a few seconds, we had Glory for a few seconds, having to go through like all that makeup to look like Adam again, that actor, just for like a little cameo, and the Master and everything. I think that just is a showcase of how loved and appreciated Buffy was, and the fact that actors would be like, oh yeah, I'll come back, just for this tiny little cameo that they didn't need to necessarily do. The fact that they went there with it, I really, really loved. And I think it's just a testament to, how it must have been to take part in the show and be invited back. So I love that. I thought that was really, really... it just felt right with me. That being said, in terms of like some characterization this season, there were some older characters that we've known since the beginning. There were some new characters this season that did somewhat drag down my enjoyment of the arcs and the potential they had. Potential? Obviously, some of the potentials are very much in that category. But even towards the end of the season, with like the whole Buffy situation being kicked out of her own bloody house, there were a few moments when I was like, wow, you all suck. And that was kind of annoying in a final season, especially when there's only, at that point, like 3 episodes left of the show, and they do something like that, knowing it needs to be fixed in 3 episodes anyway. I'm like, what's the point? So there were a few character moments for me in terms of like the writing of them, more so than anything. It didn't sit quite right and felt a bit off. It felt more so the plot needed them to behave this way, as opposed to exactly how the characters are. And I think that's another reason why maybe there weren't as many like huge standout moments for me this season. I feel like it was very plot, and not as much let's just let the characters have fun, let the characters be themselves. That might be another reason that I think sometimes the characters grated a bit and didn't feel quite like themselves. But yeah, we still got a lot of great character stuff this season. And again, I don't think any of it was fault of the cast. I thought they were all really, really good for the most part. Some of the accents of potentials notwithstanding. So yeah, the cast were phenomenal, as they always were. And yeah, some of the narrative choices, I kind of already talked about this, but the narrative choices as we approached near the end of the season, I think we know what part I'm talking about. It felt very forced and very like story driven as opposed to character driven. I feel like they could just an unnecessary additional conflict that close to the end of the season. Maybe if they'd done it a bit earlier on instead of with 3 episodes left, it could have worked a bit better. But for me, I was still like, I don't know. It just seemed to go against what had been built up relationship-wise between these characters for 7 seasons. For them to just, in the blink of an eye, just turn on Buffy like that. It felt very much like, this is the plot we need to happen. And the characters are just going to say things because how else are we going to have plot happen here? So yeah, that was a bit of a shame. But luckily, by the end of the season, they moved on from that. And the characters started to feel like themselves again in the last 2 episodes of the show. Which was a huge relief to me because I didn't want to end the series on a very sour note with some of these characters. So I'm glad that at least by the end of the season, I think it all came together again. It felt like, the Scoobies again, in a way that it hadn't in like 19 and 20. I think were the episodes that really kind of grated me with that. So yeah, that's all very well and good, and it worked out in the end. And then in terms of coming off of season 6, which, probably the darkest season of the show, I would say. The fact that it was so dark, and I think sometimes I went too much with that. I actually think pairing season 6 and season 7 together, and actually watching them, side by side, and, looking at them as the final 2 seasons of the show. One is like this, one is like this. Maybe it comes from them just being on a different network as well. I can very easily separate 6 and 7 from 1 to 5. Maybe that is helpful in this regard. I do feel like they pair very well, and I can actually appreciate season 7 more because of season 6, and I can appreciate season 6 more because of season 7. It's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know, if you adopt a pet or something, and it takes time adapting to its new house, or you've had a cat for ages and you bring in a dog, and the cat needs to get used to the dog for a while. It's an adjustment period. That's kind of how I guess I've come to mellow out a bit in terms of season 6. Even though, once again, as I said in my review way back when I did that, I really enjoyed season 6, and it's one of my favourite seasons. What season 7 went on to do with Andrew, for instance, I can probably rewatch season 6 now and not want to throttle the guy whenever he's on screen. Which couldn't have been said just coming off of season 6. I'm like, I would happily never see those fuckers again. But instead, they brought Andrew back. If you can remember my face in season 7 when those 2 first showed up, not bloody impressed. And by the end, there I am crying at Andrew honouring Anya. Like, development. It's good. And they actually did some decent stuff with those characters in season 7 as opposed to season 6. I mean, granted, Jonathan's big development in season 7 was to die, but more so with Andrew. But the fact that I think they did some wonders with that character in season 7, I think I can look back on the trio in season 6, which I wasn't that big on, and I stand by that. I still don't think, for me personally, it didn't exactly work. I think I will be able to appreciate and tolerate it much, much more when I get to season 6 when I rewatch the show, because I know where Andrew's story goes, and that's kind of one of the joys of watching TV shows and reacting. Because I'm sure as season 6 was airing, people weren't going to be like, oh well, it's fine, because I'm sure Andrew will be fine next season, because they don't know where things are going to go. And I think some people did forget that when I was going through season 6 and saying what I was saying about the trio. In hindsight, I can kind of tell, I think those people were just frustrated because they knew where Andrew in particular went in season 7. But I didn't know that yet, so why are you holding it against me, something I haven't even seen yet? I feel like people definitely I got a few people definitely doing that, like, why do you hate the trio so much? Why do you hate Andrew? Why do you hate Jonathan? I'm like, because they're doing evil shit. That's bloody why. But again, that's just, it's gonna be one of those things, isn't it? I appreciate that it's probably tough in the moment to forget, or even consider that the reactor hasn't seen the whole show yet. They probably are going through the emotions you went through when you first watched the show. But, for a lot of people, this was 20 years ago, and they've had so much more time to get used to the idea and get over certain things and frustrations with shows, whereas I'm living it for the first time. But it's one of those things. But also the very hopeful ending that I think both Season 6 and Season 7 had, with like Buffy crawling out of the grave, promising to show Dawn the world and everything. Willow being talked down from destroying everything in Season 6. And Season 7 ends with Buffy being free and, lifted of her burden. She can do whatever the hell she wants now. That last shot of her, that big smile on her face. Finally free of that burden. Both had some very hopeful endings. And because Season 6 really put these characters through the ringer, I think, emotionally, basically all of them. The fact that then Season 7 can give most of them, granted, sorry Anya, sorry Spike, can give them a more hopeful, happy ending. It's like, well, that pain that we went through in Season 6 was worth it, because look where they end up in Season 7, it all works out in the end. So I think Season 6 is all the better for Season 7 existing. I think Season 7 is all the better for Season 6 existing and being potentially quite as dark as it was. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And then, I just kind of went back to maybe some reworking of, like, the inner conflict, with, like, all the infighting between Buffy and the Potentials and Buffy and her friends, all of that. Near the end of the season, they kind of reworked that, maybe just started that a bit earlier in the season to give it more time to feel a bit more organic. That would have allowed, the middling part of the season, that kind of all blended together, to maybe have a bit more of like a standout, like, whoa, holy shit moment. If maybe just a few episodes earlier was when Buffy got kicked out or something, and that had been, episode 15, 16, that's the episode Buffy got kicked out of her house. God damn it, I remember that episode. Whereas now it's kind of a bit of a, what's going on in the middle of the season? I just think maybe there was a peculiar amount of focus on the more newer elements of the show, like the Potentials got a lot of screen time, just for them to all be bratty and not be developed really. A lot of them were just there to be cannon fodder and to make up the numbers in this big battle, outside of where they ended up going with making all the Potentials, kind of awakening all of them. So with that aside, the fact that individually, arc-wise, the characters didn't get a huge amount of development. To an extent, I think Kennedy, I guess, did, but Kennedy's still kind of awful. And we had Amanda, who I bloody loved, and she fucking dies. So there was so much focus given to them at times, instead of the core cast that had been around since season 1, and probably should have gotten more to do in the final season of the show. We had to focus on the Potentials because of where the plot needs to go. I just don't think, with the amount of focus the Potentials had, they just didn't develop them enough. And there were some times in the early part of the season, before we knew we were dealing with the first and stuff, all the episodes were opening very similar way to like this random girl being killed by one of the Bringers. I mean, like, what the hell's going on there? And it's happening all over the world. Then we kind of realised, they're trying to kill the Potentials, and then they gather in Sunnydale. Maybe if we'd gotten to that a bit sooner, maybe, just even like 1 or 2 episodes, and then we had like an episode just getting to know these girls a bit, instead of just being, oh, I'm so tired from trading, I didn't ask for this, you're such a bad leader, let's get a new leader in. Oh, you're also such a bad leader because you don't listen to me. Meh, meh, meh. We didn't have as much of that, and be like, listen, you've been dealt a shit hand, and I completely understand that. Life did not deal them a good card. they didn't ask to be potentials or anything. But they just needed, like, sit down, you're going to have to deal with this, nothing can change it, but you can survive it, you can make the most of it, let's do this. And then they could be like, okay, good, and then we actually then get to know them and see a bit more of their personalities instead of just, I'm awful, I'm a bitch, I'm moaning about absolutely everything. I think that would have done wonders for the overall arc, and it would have I think, justified the focus on the potentials, because we actually would have gotten some development from them, as opposed to just them all being, for the most part, just there to not like Buffy as a leader. But still, that's just kind of something that maybe they could have done plot-wise, but again, in such a plot-heavy season that needed to kind of be this plot-heavy to an extent, maybe, there might just not have been the room to develop all these characters that much. But if that's the case, then fine, just let them be cookie-cutter characters and focus more so on, the core cast, which I don't think they often did as much as maybe they should have done, instead of just showing the potentials, lounging about moaning instead of training. But yeah, that's just maybe something that could have been done to fix the kind of, I don't want to say it was like a slog in the middle of the season, because it wasn't at all. Like I said, I enjoyed every episode this season. I don't think there was a single one I was like, that episode was bad. It's just maybe it wasn't like pushing it, like, oh yes, huge impact, whether it's positive or negatively. It was just kind of there. And I think that's what makes this review kind of hard to do for me. Because so much of a big chunk of the season is just like, yeah, that's solid. I liked that. I think it's hard for me to get like, well, I'm feeling positive about this, I'm feeling negative about this, just because it's like, it's fine. That's all I can really say about it. But regardless of, the fact that maybe in terms of pushing the boat out, season 7 wasn't, a big example of that, doesn't mean it needed to do that. Doesn't mean, like, just because other seasons had done it, and they didn't have to this season, what they needed to do this season was wrap up the show in a satisfying, wonderful way. And I think they did that. I think they very much achieved that with season 7. And I really enjoyed it, like I said. Probably in the middle of the pack, if I were to rank the seasons, perhaps. I'd really have to think long and hard about it. I don't know. I honestly don't know if I ever could do that. I think I'd find it too hard and I'd just change my answer every day, I think. But regardless, season 7, I really enjoyed it. Based on some comments and stuff I was getting in the lead up to season 7, and some I've been able to read again now that I finished the show, I feel like I did enjoy it more than most do. A lot of people seem quite frustrated with season 7 and don't enjoy it as much, and I can completely get why. But, for someone who just took their time with it, could digest it, and I think it also helped that I was watching it alongside Angel season 4, so I was like, oh, thank God it's Buffy next. Oh goodness. Not that I didn't like Angel season 4, because I did enjoy it, but it is, I think I did prefer season 7 of Buffy to season 4 of Angel, by quite some way. So maybe that also helps in why I enjoyed the season so much. But if you just compare it to other Buffy seasons as opposed to other Angel seasons, I guess, that's when it's like, yeah, it's fine, it's there. But at the end of the day, what I wanted from season 7 was a great conclusion to the show. I got that, so fairly happy with that. And that's kind of everything I want to say in terms of general thoughts and stuff and feelings about season 7. But now we can kind of delve a bit deeper into some other stuff about the season, be it characters, episodes, etc. But first of all, just I guess to stay on a bit more of a wider look at the season, I need to revisit my season 7 predictions for my season 6 review. Okay, so it's time to look back at the predictions I made for season 7 at the end of my season 6 review. I made 6 predictions. We can basically quickly go through the first one because it's kind of an obvious one. Willow continues to be a cinnamon roll. I also put Stash, she recovers, goes through like a journey of recovery this season. And I think that's a big resounding yes from me. Others may disagree, others certainly have disagreed, but certainly more so than season 6. Willow was back to cinnamon roll status. Just so adorable, and the fact that she was scared to even go back to Sunnydale and everything because she was scared that friends might never forgive her, might want her dead, all of that, and the journey she then went on, having to move on from losing Tara and saying goodbye to her and Kennedy. It makes her happy, I suppose. Everything like that, and then kind of really coming to terms with how powerful she is and using it as a force for good in the finale. I think she's adorable. She's certainly back to doing more adorable stuff in season 7 for the most part, and I love her. It's not a surprise, but she's a cinnamon roll to me, and I do feel like she went through a big journey of recovery. A lot of that came from when she spent some time with Giles in England, and then reconnected with her friends allowed her to move forward, and she was kind of reserved on how much magic she was using at times. She was kind of scared of using it, but then she kind of turned to White Willow at the end, I think is what the fans call her, as opposed to Dark Willow, maybe Light Willow, I'm not sure, but yeah, the fact that she kind of came full circle from how her magic behaved in the end of season 6 to the end of season 7 and the big spell she was making with that, I would certainly say she recovered is what I will say. I was very carefully phrasing the use of recovered as opposed to redeemed, because I know some people said, I never forgive Willow after this, and I think that's fair enough. Any character that does wrong, you don't necessarily have to forgive them afterwards, but I think certainly forgiving them will improve your enjoyment of the show quite significantly, particularly coming off of season 6 when a lot of characters did some not so good things. But yeah, I certainly think that Willow's journey and her cinnamon roll nature was very much as I expected going into season 7, so that was good. And now here I did use a redemption arc, I used the redemption word. My next prediction was Spike redemption arc? ? Because obviously season 6 ended with him getting his soul back, so I didn't think, he's going to become a fully fledged villain now. Now he's got a soul that's going to make him super evil. So I've put yes for me. I was thinking long and hard about this because some people got so royally pissed off with me for struggling with Spike after seeing Red. And to those people, I'm like, take a look at yourself. It's a big deal. We knew Spike was evil. Yes, we knew he was a soulless demon thing. But the way that the show had presented it before, he still had some sort of moral compass to his actions. And, he hadn't gone as far as he had during Seeing Red, in terms of this group of characters and how he'd responded and behaved to them. Obviously, he's been villainous towards them and horrible towards them. But what happened in Seeing Red was a big deal, a very dark thing, and it just felt in that moment for me, it didn't feel like that was Spike. And that's the big issue I had with it. I was thinking about it. Spoilers for Game of Thrones here. Skip ahead 20 seconds if you haven't seen Game of Thrones. For me, the Spike Seeing Red moment with Buffy in the bathroom feels very much like the Daenerys burning King's Landing in The Bells. The Mad Queen kind of sudden rushed switch. We'd seen the kind of violence side of Spike in his, sexual relationship with Buffy and stuff in season 6. But for me, that kind of aggressive turn was like, whoa, that was a bit much too quickly. I'm not saying it would never have gotten to that point. I'm not saying Spike was never capable of doing that. It's just how the storyline was going, and the fact that even, just a few episodes prior to this, they were still trying to do lovey-dovey, cutesy scenes and interactions with them. It was just a bit like, whoa, okay, that's a lot. That's why I really struggled with it, and why I struggled with Spike for the rest of that season and the early parts of season 7 as well. because Buffy still hadn't come to terms with it yet, and she was still unsure of him season 7. People were still unsure of him when they found out he had a soul. Angel, even when he had a soul, Xander was never sure of him. A lot of that came from jealousy, yes. But people are wary of vampires and the potential of them, and that was certainly how I was feeling after seeing Red with Spike. And it's not like I enjoyed not enjoying Spike, because he was one of my bloody favourite characters. And I'm glad that, once again, he is one of my favourites again. That was one of the moments I think season 6 pushed it a bit too far for me, for my taste. There's entertainment, and then there's what that was for me. So yeah, the fact that I started on like a place with Spike at the start of the season compared to me like crying at his death at the end of the season, and I feel like he really worked on himself and came so far. His interactions with Buffy, I really loved. Some of the highlights of the season for me. The fact that he was like torturing himself over what he'd done. That scene at the end of Beneath You, the church scene, which seems to be quite iconic from what I've gathered. That whole speech, a really nice speech at the end of that episode, and talk about, can we rest? When can we rest? And then he does at the end of the season, when he kind of gives his life. So in my eyes, Spike really did turn around and, redeemed himself in my eyes as a character. And I'm so bloody glad, because it would have been such a shame for such an incredible character like that to have ended on a sour note with me. Much like I was afraid was going to happen with characters like Giles, when I was like, what the hell are you doing? In like episodes 19 and 20. Stuff like that. So yeah, I put, for me, very specifically, yes for me, because I know, again, some people don't like Spike and couldn't look past seeing Red. And again, I get it. I think in real life people are going to do horrible, horrible things to people. They may work on themselves. They may redeem themselves in real life as well. But that doesn't mean they deserve your forgiveness. So I think it's fine to not forgive Spike, to not forgive Angel for what he did as Angelus, when we kind of found out exactly what he was doing with that. It's fine to never forgive him for that as well. It's fine to never forgive Willow for what happened at the end of season 6. She did some awful shit. But for me, I found myself really enjoying the show, even more so because I was in a place where I felt like, these characters have moved forward, they're redeeming themselves, they're working on themselves. And for me, Spike very much fell into that category and redeemed himself. So yeah, I say yes for me with that one. And then another prediction was another main character or more will die. Yes, basically. Kind of an easy bet, I guess, because it was the last season. I just assumed people were going to die. And we lost Spike, we lost Anya. Jonathan died as well, but he's like, I meant like a main characters in like the main cast, and we lost 2 of them. So yes, that happened. Kind of an easy, cheaty one just to get a yes, but there we go. And then I've put loads of old characters will return and Angel crossover ? And I put like yes and no for this one. We did get an Angel crossover because Angel was in this season, and he kind of brought the amulet-y thing with him that he found in his own show. So to an extent, yes, there was an Angel crossover. I think it's also no for me because I thought maybe more characters from Angel would be in it. We got some characters in Buffy in Angel season 4 instead, and I thank the Lord every day that he did. But yeah, it would have been really cool for like Wesley and Cordelia to also be in Buffy one last time, because we never saw them in the show again after season 3. But because of where the storyline was, particularly with Cordelia in season 4 of Angel, that that was just not going to happen. And then loads of old characters will return again. Yes, we did see lots of old characters. We saw the big bads, etc. No, because it wasn't exactly them. It was the first kind of being in their form. So, I could never have predicted that would be how the characters will come back. You know, I very much had it in my mind like, okay, they're gonna come back in present day. You know, we're gonna see all these old characters. I don't exactly know who, but I thought we would because it was the last season. Technically did, just not in the way I would have expected. And then another one was Dawn will go through her own journey / maybe being an honorary Slayer ? And again, I feel like yes and no. Dawn very much did go through a journey this season. I think more so her journey could easily be whittled down to episode 12, Potential, when she thought she could be like a potential Slayer, but it was actually Amanda. Her kind of journey in that episode, I feel like, was just a big summary of her big arc this season. And, you know, in Chosen as well, when she was like, you know, don't anything you say will sound like a goodbye. She kind of doesn't want to say goodbye to her sister again after losing her in the gift and everything. You know, some progression with that. And I do feel like, you know, she'd grown a lot from the girl we met in season 5, you know, just being the key to where she ended up. A really great character arc for her. And yeah, I've kind of put yes and no for this because honorary Slayer, for like 30 minutes, she thought she was an honorary Slayer, so it kind of did happen. But because of where they left off at the end of season 6, like Dawn, you know, actually being quite badass and fighting off those things with Buffy in the grave, I thought maybe there was going to be more to that kind of thing, and maybe like her being trained in that way, which we didn't get, which is kind of why it's like yes and no in terms of that prediction. Probably more so on the no side than anything in terms of what I was expecting Dawn's arc to be this season, but it doesn't mean it's bad just because what I was expecting didn't happen. So there was that. And then finally, and I'm very glad I can say no to this one, I kind of thought maybe I won't be satisfied with the show's ending. I'll just throw that out there. And luckily that I was wrong about that. And I really enjoyed the show's ending. I thought it was very, very satisfying, very emotional, action-packed, delivered on basically every front for me. But yeah, I just thought I think I just wanted to throw a crazy prediction out into the wind at the end of season 6 with that, knowing I wasn't going to make any more predictions for Buffy. But yeah, very, very happily proved wrong on that front because I really enjoyed how the show ended, and I thank the heavens that I did. So yes, those are my predictions overall. I didn't do too badly. There's only one like absolute no, that did not happen, but I'm glad it didn't, because it would have meant if I was right about that, I didn't enjoy the end of the show, and I did, so that's good. And a lot of it, I feel like I had the right idea on some things, and like where some characters were potentially going, but as is classic with Buffy, kind of very much not in the way I expected it. You know, it gave me what I wanted, but not in the way I would have thought. So that's kind of how that planned out. So once again, Buffy kind of played me like a fiddle and cut my strings. But yes, those were my predictions from my season 6 review, and I did fairly well. And yeah, very glad to have been wrong about that last one for sure. But yeah, just Buffy once again changing things up. But yes, that was everything prediction-wise. And now we need to talk about the characters this season. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some character discussion. Just talking about the main players this season, or just characters I wanted to kind of give a shout out to that I personally really enjoyed or appreciated or needed to talk about this season. So obviously, not every single character who was in this season I'm going to be talking about, but just like the big standouts for me. So makes sense as always to start with Buffy herself. I adore Buffy. I think that's fairly obvious. Particularly, you know, with where I stood on the whole kicking her out of her own house argument this season. I was very much Team Buffy. But, you know, coming off of everything she had to endure coming back from the dead last season and everything with that, and in even season 5, you know, she dealt with a lot, and Buffy's arc in season 5 was my favourite thing about that season. Everything she's kind of had to deal with and struggle through right from the start of the show up till the end. Just such an incredible arc for her, and Sarah Michelle Gellar was just perfection from start to finish. Truly did have to carry the show at times, and she certainly did, and made it look easy. You know, she threw everything into Buffy, and I think I don't know if I would have connected with Buffy as much if it had been played by someone else. I think from just Buffy as a character will get her pretty far, so I do think she's just the cool kind of character anyway. But the fact that Sarah could bring so much strength and so much vulnerability to the character at exactly the same moment, I don't know how many people would be able to do that quite as successfully. Just the strength she's had to show, with everything she's endured, bouncing back from the events of season 6 in this one, then having to deal with all the potentials, dealing with the first again, having to face off with them, getting a job at the new Sunnydale High, interacting with Robin, finding Spike has a soul now, kind of dealing with that, and as more and more potentials were coming along, Faith coming back, when the potentials killing themselves when they first manipulated them into taking her own life, then getting kicked out, rejoining, and that final kind of standoff as well, being able to be open and emotionally raw with like Spike in his last moments as well, kind of saying she loved him, and all the tender moments that they had throughout the season. She's had a lot on her shoulders, and she's kind of just being the Slayer is such a huge kind of bout of responsibility that she didn't ask for, and then when she needed to be this leader and give all these speeches to the potentials, suddenly she was kind of thrown into that as well. She never asked for any of it, and then they did bloody judge her for it, and was like, well, I didn't ask to be the leader of anything, piss off. But she still handled it superbly well. Whenever they kind of showcase the endurance and the sheer power and strength that Buffy has, the show always will shine, always did shine, and season 7 was no exception to that rule. And the fact that she kept talking about what a burden it was, and even she got to meet loads of potentials in this season. She got to reunite with another Slayer. She got to see how the Slayers were made. She got to make new Slayers herself and kind of break the rules that were kind of surrounding her journey as the Slayer. Everything she went through in Helpless in season 3, but she was like, well, no girl and no Slayer is ever going to have to go through that again, all that shit. Helps that the Watchers Council were all blown up, but that she really took all that destiny into her own hands, and she felt so burdened with it ever since she was kind of called. The fact that the show then ends with her, being free, and all the Slayers are awakening all over the world. She's not the chosen one anymore, but she's happy about that, and it gives her that freedom. What an incredible arc, and I didn't know how I expected the show to end and how I expected Buffy's character to end. I never thought they'd kill her off again. But while I didn't predict anything, I wasn't sure where it would go, I'm so glad that Buffy's story here ended where it did. I feel like it was such a well-earned ending for her, because she'd found peace when she died in the gift, and she was in heaven. She got ripped out of that. So the fact that she's found peace again in life, I think is such a wonderful, beautiful arc, and I'm so happy for her that she kind of managed to get that after everything she had to go through. What an incredible character, an incredible lead to the show. I'm glad that season 7, I think, really did wrap up her story and give it the justice it deserved. Because, can't really have Buffy the Vampire Slayer without Buffy. So, yeah, I loved what they did with her this season. Sarah Michelle Gellar was fantastic. And the fact that I just keep thinking back to the scene in Beneath You where Spike's like, can we rest? When can we rest? Now Buffy can. I just love that as an ending to her character journey. As far as the TV show is concerned, didn't know about the comics, but just what she has ahead of her now, the open road ahead of her, Sunnydale's completely gone, decimated. Just that freedom that she doesn't need to be the chosen one anymore. What an incredible arc. Bloody love it. And I love Buffy as a character. One of the best leads in any TV show I've watched by far. Yeah. I just love what the character can stand for and can mean to so many people. And I love what Sarah poured into that character. I'm not sure anyone else could have quite done it as well. Certainly not for 7 seasons as well. That must have been a lot of work. So yeah, so glad that Buffy ended up where she did, and happy and free at the end. What an amazing character. Then we have Xander, who I do feel like for the most part of this season was somewhat just relegated to the background and a bit neglected. You know, a lot of his arc I think came from his relationship and non-relationship with Anya, trying to move forward from that, bounce back from that, then his eye being gouged out, then him turning on Buffy, then him not turning on Buffy, then him, you know, losing Anya all over again for good this time. Really a finality to that relationship now. But still, I really love Xander's growth from where he was in season 1 to now. You know, maybe not necessarily just his arc in season 7, but to where he started to where he is. Like, it's kind of a night and day character shift with him, and I love the maturity he kind of found in himself. And like I mentioned before, one of my favourite Xander scenes, potentially my favourite Xander scene in all of Buffy, is 401, where he's saying, you know, I asked myself what would Buffy do, and the fact that we had a very similar scene again like that with him and Dawn in Potential was fantastic. And just the emotional maturity he's kind of developed over time. He still has like his moments of little jealousy and pettiness, obviously, like him and Anya and stuff, but he can move past that, and he can still be loyal for the most part when he needs to be. The fact that he lost a whole ass eye is a lot to deal with, and I feel like he's like, well, got to make the best of the situation now, let's just push forward through it. I actually feel like he dealt with that exceptionally well, so I kind of respect him a lot for that. And yeah, watching the scene with him and Dawn in Potential, and she's like, maybe that's your power, seeing. I rewatched that scene earlier before this review. I was like, that is just fucking cruel. Like, they knew what they were doing with that line. Rude. But yeah, that was kind of a big deal for him to obviously lose an eye like that. But I guess the show didn't need to deal with the after effects of that for too long, because so much was going on, and then the show ended. So boom. But yeah, Xander is again another really great character. Very much back and forth with him on the early seasons, but certainly once they left high school, for the most part, I've really loved what they've done with him. And you know, his relationship with Anya was always really nice. I loved it. Obviously, I'm sad they kind of did come to the decision that it just wasn't meant to be with them, even though they still, you know, they reconnected a few times after that, and maybe there was potential for it to properly, you know, bloom into something again in the long run. But sadly, Anya's life was, I can't really say cut short, because she did have technically quite a long life, shorter than it should have been anyway. And you know, in those last moments we found out that she died, and seemingly died saving Andrew, he's just like, that's my girl. He still kind of could pay tribute to her in that way, still very respectful of her. And you know, the fact that he learned to properly respect women, I appreciate in a character. So well done, Xander. You achieved the bare minimum. Well done, buddy. That's probably a bit harsh, but yeah, I've enjoyed him often being like the heart of Buffy's journey, and a really great friend, a very strong person, and the fact that he's one of the ones who doesn't have any of the powers. He's like this all-powerful slayer, or this all-powerful witch, or a werewolf, or anything like that. But he still does what he needs to do. He still tries his best. He still tries to get by, and help out in any way he can. I think that takes quite some courage and commitment in itself. And for the most part, season 7 was no exception to that. And I like that he kind of was very open and honest with someone about the fact that he struggles with it. We've seen him be so insecure about himself before, and could you imagine like season 1 Xander being like, hey look, I struggle with this, you know, I'm not confident about this part of myself, I don't like this part of myself. And the fact that Xander can do that in season 7, because you know, he didn't like, you know, not being seen as like super masculine guy in the earlier seasons. He's still, it's not his ideal situation to ever be considered by that, even in the later seasons, granted, but he was a lot more emotionally honest, I think, in the later seasons. Some of that, I assume, would have come from his relationship with Anya, ironically, because he was also kind of showing her to be a bit more human. But I think she also made him more human in that sense, because he had like a proper serious relationship that he didn't just throw away like he did with Cordelia. Still salty. And yeah, I just love maybe not so much like a season 7 arc, because I feel like, you know, it wasn't as big of a standout development for him this season, other than losing an eye. But from where Xander started to where he ended up, another incredible journey. And yeah, I really like Xander. I know a lot of people still don't, and I get it. I very much have my ups and downs with him as well, but yeah, I love that we had someone who never had any special powers or abilities, never showed that much interest in learning either, and he still like survived to the end. He still made it to the end and made it through, fought the same battles and helped win the day, through being the heart. I really like that journey for him, and the message behind Xander surviving to the end I think is really powerful as well. So I really like Xander, and he had a nice role to play in the final season. Then we have Willow. We know she's my favourite. She's my favourite from the pilot. She's my favourite right to the end. You know, she hasn't had ideal moments, granted. You know, season 6, not her finest hour. She was a pretty fucking awful person in season 6. Multiple times. And people were like, oh, you just forgive her for anything, don't you just look past that? Like, do you forget season 3 with her and Xander, how much I was disappointed in her and said that multiple times? Apparently they did. But yeah, just to see where she started off, this kind of shy, insecure girl, who told Buffy, like, oh, you know, you don't have to talk to me, it's fine, to proper huge goddess witch person, with white hair and glowing face. I mean, she's always had a glowing face to me, but yeah, another hugely powerful and incredible story character arc that she had. Probably my favourite character arc of the Buffy lot, but that's not really much of a surprise, really. She's my favourite character, I'm going to enjoy her arc, aren't I? One of the reasons I enjoyed her character so much was because of her arc. And with probably season 6 aside, she did still remain kind of true to her Cinnamon self that we first met. Just to see her kind of discover magic, get much better at it, more adept, super powerful, too powerful, dangerously powerful, holding herself back, super powerful, with good intentions and good reasons, good motivations. I really loved to see her kind of grow as a witch. And, you know, her relationship with Oz meant a lot and still does mean so much to me. Her relationship with Tara, wholesome as fuck, cut far too short, still pissed off, still salty about Tara being killed off. But again, that was another really lovely relationship, very important to me as well. Kennedy was there, and the fact that she went to such a dark place, quite literally, and bounced back on the other side of it. You know, the whole magic is like an addictive drug kind of thing. You know, they really went to town on that in season 6, but I really liked that arc in particular, and they can push the boundaries of how much you can care and love these characters. Because, you know, when you first meet Willow in season 1, could you have ever imagined Dark Willow was going to be a thing, you know? And, you know, then the white light Willow at the end of Chosen as well. Just seeing her kind of super rely on these abilities came from a place of real insecurity. Her impulsive nature as well. The fact that she kind of came from that place to super reserved and kind of scared of herself after she went too far, and then slowly finding that right balance, and becoming a force for good right at the end when it really counted, in the final battle. Another wonderful arc, and an absolute privilege to have kind of witnessed it. And Alison, what an amazing actress she is. You know, I had people get annoyed at me when I started the show because I was like, oh, that's Lily from How I Met Your Mother. I know she's in this. And I'm like, actually, she was Willow first. I'm like, yeah, well, yes, granted, but I saw her as Lily first, so I'm going to call her Lily, aren't I? Get all my grievances out now in this last review. But now I'm just like, Lily who? Like, Willow is kind of like the defining role for me and Alison, as a fan of hers. It's just, I saw so much of myself, I think, in Willow and in Oz, and in Tara. So to see the journey of her becoming all powerful and a bit too powerful, and then I'm sounding like the bloody Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like, ooh, there's not enough magic in this witch. There's too much magic in this witch. This one's just right. And that's Willow at the end of season 7. That kind of arc I've really enjoyed seeing. And I like the message that maybe you're never going to be too far gone. You can bounce back. You can do bad shit. You can repent for it. And that's such a meaningful journey for me. And I love to have seen where Willow started to where she ended up. You know, my favourite Buffyverse character. Just such a force of nature and ultimately a force for good when it came down to it. And the ultimate cinnamon roll. I love her to pieces. I'm very sad I'm probably never going to see her again in live action. I very much doubt she's going to be in Angel Season 5 at all. I don't think any of the Buffy characters are. Well, I think one character is, but I don't know what character, because that was my Angel prediction. But like, I don't think Willow's going to be like main cast Angel Season 5 or anything, you know. But regardless, I bloody adore Willow. It's not really much of a surprise. And I really enjoyed her arc this season. And to find that she kind of found peace with herself and a comfortable spot with herself and her magic after everything with Dark Willow. Just really, really great stuff. And I adore her to pieces. Then we have Spike, who I feel like I've already talked a bit about Spike earlier in this review anyway, but I'm so glad that I'm in such a good place with Spike again by the end of the show. I think it was kind of a master stroke to give him a soul. You know, I think because they explored so many avenues they could do with Spike as he was, maybe that's why they pushed it really far in Seeing Red, and I was like, well, that's too much. And a way of bouncing back from that and doing something different with Spike is to give him the soul. And I think that did wonders. James, fantastic from start to finish, as he always was. Just something so charismatic about Spike. And to see him kind of lose that at the start of the season, see him really struggle with like the first tormenting him and everything, being kind of a sleeper agent, getting flashbacks to like him and his mum, and when he first turned, and then he turned his mum, and then slayed his mum. Some cool revelations with that, and then the past with Robin's mother and everything, the dynamic there. While he has a soul, he hasn't necessarily lost sight of what made him Spike, or at least like the super charismatic and lovable parts of Spike, pre-soul coming back. And yeah, his interactions with Buffy, I adored. And just the growth he managed to show over the course of this season to start. A very broken, tormented man to kind of fight back against that, and be in a place where he could give up his life and accept whatever comes next, and actually show like some excitement in what comes next and how it all ends, to kind of save the day. You know, from the guy who first drove into the Sunnydale sign, you know, absolute charismatic slime ball, but a slime ball nonetheless, to kind of that hero at the end of the show. Another incredible journey, and I've loved seeing Spike again bounce back this season. His interactions with Buffy were great. You know, bouncing off like a character with Andrew when they paired them up, for instance. I loved that. He got like his comedic streak back in a big way later on into the season. He also didn't take any shit. He's also a big Buffy stan and defender, which I really appreciated in, you know, the last few episodes of the season. Spike was kind of my my voice of reason there. And I just always loved his passion for Buffy, more so in this season than last season for sure. And the fact that he was so almost willing to die in Chosen because he had like the perfect night, the best night of his life, just holding Buffy the night before the big battle. That was kind of all he needed, all he wanted. That was kind of the peak of his existence. I think it says a lot about how far Spike has come, because there's such a fine line between sex and violence with him right from when we first met him. The fact that he ends up, and a truly intimate moment for Spike's character, is just him holding the woman he loves instead of, you know, anything else happening. You know, leaps and bounds of development there from where he started to where he is now. So yeah, when he still had that self-doubt when he was like a sleeper agent for the first and they had control over him, that fear, he still, you know, was happy to be that chained up and stuff in case he hurt people. Yeah, he became once again one of my favourite characters, and a very noble, brave ending to him as well. You know, he truly didn't believe that Buffy loved him even after everything at the end. Maybe it just would have been quite painful to have heard that just when nothing can happen because he's about to die. But yeah, another remarkable character who I grew to adore and love again, which I'm very happy about. So yeah, Spike is fantastic. I loved his arc from beginning to end. Very much a big roller coaster in terms of my enjoyment of the character at times, but you know, part of the journey is the end, and at the end of Spike's development I thought was phenomenal, and James was always great. So love Spike. Then we can talk about Anya. Damn. I think a big part of Anya's arc this season all came down to the scene, I don't know if it was episode 20 or 21, when her and Andrew go off together, and she talks about the fact that this time she's going to stay and fight, whereas she left in season 3. Because, you know, this group of humans are going to stand up and fight. I'm going to do the same thing. Really embracing like the mortal side of her now, especially because she had been made a vengeance demon again. She kind of gave that back up near the start of the season, just to be mortal. Embracing that and going out a hero, and just to fight a battle that maybe they wouldn't have won. She kind of faced it anyway. That bravery she kind of developed, and you know, she just became so wonderfully human at the end, and that's something she struggled with when she kind of first got with Xander and everything. I just love that development. There were a few moments, as always, you kind of may struggle with her when she was like, Buffy, we're not friends, when she like when everyone like turned on her. I was like, don't just undo all that development. I feel like there must be at least some care there. That didn't sit right with me, that side, but again, they really made amends for that near the end of the season. And yeah, just to see how she's introducing the Wish to where she ended up, afraid of mortality at times, and then just embracing it. And just to be as brave as she was in the final battle, I actually think, in that situation, a lot of people wouldn't fight that fight. They might run away. They might not be as brave as she was in that moment. So if anything, I think Anya achieved more than just humanity in her last moments. I think, she was braver than most humans would have been, which just shows how extraordinary I think she ended up being. So I really loved that journey, and very sad just how quickly she was killed off, and there just wasn't time to properly mourn for her because the episode had like a minute left. But to go out in a blaze of glory, I guess, is still quite something. And yeah, I'm sad that obviously there's no future for her and Xander now, and there's no just future for her. So to live such a long life as she had, but also such a short a life as she had as like a human, another really interesting character and a great addition to the show. Like, I could not imagine like the latter half of the show without Anya around. She was absolutely hilarious at times. She bloody killed me with some of her one-liners. I will never forget her in the body, that speech. Just one of the best moments of the show, by far. Emma was always wonderful in the part. And sad as it is that she's no longer with us, I think, her final moments showcased the growth that she had compared to like the season 3 finale when she left. Another remarkable journey, and I really love Anya a hell of a lot. And then we have Dawn to kind of round off the main cast. Again, I feel like a lot of her arc, I've already mentioned, could have been all encased in potential, that episode, and a bit in the finale about, not wanting to say goodbye to Buffy again, not even in the space where she could lose her sister again. The fact that she could learn to just embrace being ordinary, and the fact that she's embracing being ordinary makes her extraordinary, because she used to be this all-powerful key, and then she was just mortal and just a human girl who needs to do homework and clean her room and all of that, and has to deal with like her sister being the Slayer, everything that comes with that. It's obviously a bit of a burden as well, and to kind of push through that. And when it came down to, I might be a potential here, I could be something really special, when she realises she isn't, she just has to take it in her stride, because what else can you do? That again shows a lot of strength, I think, in her. And just like the annoying little sister that we first met, to where she ended up, someone who really found her own identity and her own voice, away from just like being a plot point in season 5. That's what she kind of was, and then she just became Dawn again. And it's one of those things, again, just like with Anya, I couldn't imagine the last few seasons without Dawn around. It seems bizarre to me now to think back to seasons 1 to 4 when Dawn wasn't around. I'm like, well, yeah, Buffy's got a little sister, of course she does. And I think some of that just comes from the writing of the character. A lot of it comes from Michelle's performance as well. I thought she was always fantastic. And yeah, I really enjoyed how she just slotted into the group and slotted into the world. Like when Faith came back in season 7, and like saw Dawn, like, wow, you've grown a lot, or something. You're like, you're a lot taller. And I'm just thinking, like, we've never seen those two interact on screen before, and yet you can absolutely believe that Dawn has these memories of Faith, and Faith remembers Dawn. And you can only imagine, like, what would that, what would those interactions have actually been in like the 2-parter in season 4 if Dawn was there and we actually kind of saw what they remember, how different would things have been. Everything with that, I thought, it's just testament to how great of a character I think personally Dawn is. Yeah, she brought a lot to the show for me, a huge kind of emotional core. I think her presence also added stuff to Buffy's character, to Xander's character, because it gave Xander someone who's going through what he was going through, and like in terms of all my friends have powers, I don't. It allowed him to kind of open up to her in a way he probably couldn't to anyone else. That helped his character a lot as well. Yeah, they just did some wonderful stuff with Dawn that I really enjoyed. She really became very strong person. She knew what was right for the most part, apart from kicking her sister out of her own house. Salt count, ding. And yeah, I really loved what they ended up doing with Dawn, and just the kind of identity she found for herself when she started off with absolutely none, and that was kind of the whole point of her, was that she was given this identity that she hadn't really earned or deserved when the key was transformed into like a little girl, but then she kind of earned what the monks had made her out to be. She very much earned that and can move forward from it, which I thought was a really great character journey and a really interesting kind of thing to do with her. And yeah, I really love what she brought to the show ultimately, and really enjoyed her this season. I think this probably was her best season. She had a lot of good moments. And yeah, just her growth has also been really nice to see play out over season 5, 6 and 7. So yeah, I really like Dawn a hell of a lot as well. And yeah, I think that just shows like what a strong, brilliant cast of like main characters we had this season. Some of them I do think were kind of underutilized. I think more Dawn could have been nice, more Xander could have been nice, more Anya could have been nice. But when it was their time to shine, I think they certainly did shine. So can't really complain too much about that. And season 7 I think would have been so much less enjoyable if we even had lost even just one of those kind of main characters there. So yeah, they were all wonderful. And now we're going to talk about some of the more secondary recurring characters in the season. Again, not every single one that appeared in the season, but just a few I felt like we needed to talk about or address at the very least. Okay, so on to like the recurring secondary characters of the season. I think it makes sense to start with Giles, because he's still a pretty big deal. I'm glad we saw a lot more of him this season than we did last season as well. Makes sense that he would kind of come back and help with the potentials. I like that, he's starting the season being kind of a mentor to Willow, kind of trying to ease her guilt from the events of season 6. I really liked that as an introduction to him, and seeing him living in England and everything. Was all really good fun, and to see him kind of in that role was nice, considering where things then would go with him and Buffy, and her being like, I think you've taught me everything I need to know, bye. Even though they kind of, they've repaired that kind of fracture by the end of the show, thankfully. I still really liked that we got a bit of mentor Giles early in the season. Then badass escape of where the Bringer's trying to kill him. That was pretty cool. Them kind of toying with, is he actually the first? Is he not, for an episode? And like not revealing that he, if he was fine or not, and just glossing over that for a few episodes. I thought it was actually quite odd. I don't know if that was even necessary, but it happened. But regardless, I did enjoy, when they paired Giles off with some of the characters that have a bit of fun, like him and Anya, I think, went on a little mission together at some point in the season, where I think they learnt that, is it Buffy's death or Buffy coming back from the dead allowed the first to, make their move or something. I'm not sure I ever really understood exactly how the first were able to, manipulate that event for whatever reason. But I just assumed that it was fine and it was an explanation. But yeah, I enjoyed him kind of going on missions, kind of finding that out. Just being absolutely done with some of the bullshit of people, just making his sassy British remarks. I'm always going to appreciate that, because it me. And yeah, I enjoyed that kind of side to him, as always. I'm trying to offer guidance and counsel. We did have the bit of a wobble with the whole kicking her out of her own fucking house thing, but we moved past from that. There's a few episodes where I felt like the writing just wasn't there for Giles. It was more so just plot, making him not quite act like himself. But came back round, and him and Buffy kind of made amends, which I liked. I loved his callback in the finale to the Earth Student. That was great. very fan surfacey, but I loved it, so I don't care. And to see him kind of have one of those, like, just before the big battle, he had like a moment with like his 3 adopted children. You know, Buffy and Willow and Xander all there, like the core 4. I'm glad they kind of gave them a moment. And yeah, I don't know if this season was Giles at his absolute best. I feel like I did prefer him in all the other seasons, because we did have that kind of wobble with him. But it's still, he's such a huge part of the show. I do feel like season 6 suffered a bit from him not being around as much, but it also really gained from his badass as fuck entrance in season 6, when he came back at the end. Obviously, we didn't quite have that moment here because he was in it a lot more, but I'm glad we saw a lot more of it, because I feel like for most of the time, Giles is a very comforting presence to me. Probably because we often have the same sense of humour. I wonder why that could be. But yeah, I really do like that Giles was around so much more, and he remained sassy, sometimes too sassy, to the point I was like, what the hell are you doing, kicking her out of her own bloody house? But one of these days I'll let that go. Not today. I mean, I'm not really going to have a chance to moan about it ever again, am I? So I might as well take it while I have the platform to. But yeah, for the most part, Giles did remain his Gilesy self, and that is no bad thing. And I'm glad we saw so much of him in this final season. I'm glad by the end things were probably patched up with him and Buffy. I would have liked maybe more moments with just those two that weren't them like turning on each other. But regardless, I just love, like, you know, what Giles always brought to the show. I missed him not being around as much in season 6. I think it was nice they made up for that in season 7. He could be around a bit more, even if maybe they didn't do as much with him, to like doing something maybe a bit different outside of something that was, for me, a bit out of touch with his character. But he's always been fun, and I do feel like, you know, in terms of like character development and stuff, he hasn't needed to really be developed that much in the last few seasons, because where do you really go after he like killed Ben, you know? So yeah, that was interesting to see. Just the fact that he didn't really need that much development. I really don't feel like he went through any like changes this season. He was just kind of there to be like a mentor to the best of his abilities, which he's often very good at, to be fair to the guy. And I think that does then give other characters more room to breathe and have their own kind of development of their own, because Giles was already an excellent character. So yeah, maybe we didn't need any more of that. But yeah, love Giles. I'm glad he was around a lot this final season, even if we did have a few moments where I was like, Giles, what the hell are you doing? Came through in the end, and I'm going to miss the sassy British wit, because... So yeah, really enjoyed Giles, and I'm glad we had him back for this season. Anthony Head, of course. He's wonderful, so very happy with that. Then let's talk about Robin next, Principal Wood, if you prefer to call him by that. You know, there was clearly more to him from the second we first saw him. You know, just like the new principal and everything, but there's always something more to the principals, normally. Sometimes it's just the fact that they're just waiting so they can have him get eaten by some hyena students, eaten by a giant snake. So it's a nice bit of character development really for the principals, and the fact that Principal Wood wasn't eaten by any giant monstery demon things. So that's nice. It's a nice change. I'm glad they kind of went against the norm with that. For a time I did think he died, but thankfully that wasn't the case. And yeah, he ended up being a really interesting asset to the show. I loved the twist with his backstory, and the fact that he's actually the son of a Slayer, and the Slayer that Spike killed, and he kind of held a grudge against Spike when he realised who that was. I do feel like he chose the very wrong time to properly address that. I feel like they needed to deal with that a bit sooner than they actually did, but it's fine. I can understand his anger and him wanting to kind of, you know, deal with that revenge and everything, but there was a time and a place for it. I think Buffy made that very clear by the end of Lies My Parents Told Me, I think was the episode where they dealt with that. But yeah, I did enjoy the kind of mystery going on, like, oh, is this guy dodgy? And then you actually found out exactly how he's connected to all of this. I thought him and Buffy bounced off each other very well. I thought him and Faith bounced off each other even better, and I'd like to think that that is a relationship that they explore, whether or not it's in the comics or not, if it's just like passing mention or something, I don't know. But for now, before the comics completely ruin my headcanon, I like to think him and Faith are kind of giving things a go, and he's surprising her. So I thought them kind of coming from some broken homes and going through some very similar experiences at times, losing their mothers young and everything. It's a very interesting connection to kind of pick up on, and you got to give props to the writers and stuff, I think, for actually thinking of that pairing just as the show was kind of coming to an end, because sometimes things just like nicely fall into place with that, and I think the connection between Robin and Faith was a really nice addition. And again, he had his goals and his mindset. He could have a funnier side to him as well, a light-hearted side. He could also be quite a badass, which I appreciated. And again, I think he was a very broken guy for a long time, but deep down well, not even deep down, he is a good guy. And a very unique addition to this final season, I suppose. I really did enjoy having him around. I thought he was a lot of fun. If, not great at choosing the moments at times when to enact revenge on stuff, but I can kind of understand why he would want to address it. But yeah, a very unique principal character for the series. I'm glad they kind of changed it up if they were going to introduce a new principal. You don't just want Snyder 2.0, because they already did that for a couple of seasons, didn't they? So yeah, giving him a backstory like that in history just helps tie it into the big themes of the season. I think the big kind of arc of the season, really focusing on the Slayers and the lore behind them, and it helped Spike, who now has a soul, to deal with something else. He did wrong in his past when he killed Nikki. So yeah, what he kind of brought was really great, and I liked his self-confidence. He's like, oh, I'm prettier than you, Faith. That's funny. And yeah, more so than anything, I think the bond between him and Faith really, really worked for me, and a great kind of pairing of characters ultimately. So I really enjoyed actually having Robin around. And yeah, he was a fun addition to the cast. I really enjoyed him, and I like the actor anyway. He's good in Suits, where him and Jasmine were a thing. So there you go. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. And then I feel in the mood to be a bit negative, so I'm going to skip over this next one and go back to him later. But let's talk about the potentials, shall we? Just because I will be praising a lot of these characters, but they need to be addressed because obviously they're such a big part of the season. I've already explained why I feel like they didn't necessarily work a bit earlier on. Some of them worked. Amanda. I wrote down Amanda specifically because I really liked her. She was wholesome and sweet. So of course they gutted her like a fish. That was a shame. But everyone else, some of them didn't get a character and was pretty bland. So I'm just like, okay. You have Felicia Day on a show, and then you just give her a character that doesn't really have any personality. Just like, well, okay, that's a choice. Then we have Rona. Wow. Why couldn't she have died? Yeah. Hated her. It was funny, because when she first turned up, when she was first in it for a bit, I was like, oh, I really like her. She was the one potential who made a really good first impression on me, aside from Amanda. So I was like, oh yeah, that's good. Someone I can root for. And then she ended up probably being the worst of all for me. Because at least Kennedy made Willow happy, so she had something going for her. But Rona was just awful all around, which sucks. So yeah, she was tiresome, and I'm annoyed that she lived. But what can you do? It's just a character. I'm never going to see her again, thank the Lord. And if there is a comic book all about her, do not point me in the direction of it, because I have no interest. But yeah, she was awful. Some of the potentials, they weren't as a whole developed enough, I think. They were just there to kind of whine and moan and be a bit more of a hindrance than a help. But when they wanted to, like the fight at the bar with Faith, then they put in the effort. But when they're actually fighting like Uber Vamps and training and stuff, oh no, we're not going to put any effort in then. So yeah, I think there's just a bit of inconsistency in terms of like that. I think it's hard to make any like, we need to train up these people to make an army. I think it's hard to make any storyline like that interesting anyway, in any show. Especially for like basically half a season when they were all being introduced. The idea behind the Blanks really cool, and the end game with them was exceptionally cool when they all kind of got given their powers and they could all fight back and all the Slayers were awakened and stuff. That was really great, but the characters themselves were just very annoying, and maybe introduce them a bit earlier, actually give them some personalities and let's get to know them a bit. Because I think potential helped because spent the whole episode, we actually saw Amanda earlier on. She had a scene with Buffy when Buffy was still the counselor and stuff. And we kept seeing her crop up throughout the episode, so we got to know her, and then we realised, oh, she's a potential, let's bring her on board. And we kind of knew her a bit. But there just wasn't really a chance to do that with any of the other potentials. They were just like either there, or they were just annoying and awful. So yeah, they were kind of a hindrance on my enjoyment somewhat for the season overall. But I think a few tweaks could have made the story with them a lot more bearable. And then Kennedy, in part of that, I don't like her. She had her moments. I don't think I minded her in the last episode. I think she was fine. But when any love interest after Tara was going to suffer, let's be honest. So it's a shame, but it also didn't help that Kennedy was just a brat. And just her being honest that she was a brat doesn't excuse the fact that she's a brat. If anything, it's like, well, why don't you change your ways then? If you know you're a brat, do something about it. Make yourself a better person. She was like, no. Okay. But she made Willow happy in the end. I liked her commitment to Willow, even though her initial pursuit of Willow I thought was like, okay, just back off. You're clearly making her uncomfortable. I think she kind of wore her down more than anything. But, they made each other happy, I guess. And I did like her in The Killer in Me, when she could bring Willow back, talk her down from being Warren. But then every 5 seconds would then remind her about how dangerous she used to be, which probably didn't help in her recovery. So I really did have my ups and downs with her. Overall, I'm not big on her as a character. I wasn't wishing her dead by the end of the show, only because it would make Willow sad. But aside from that, she was a character in this season. And I didn't like her turning against Buffy and everything. And then as soon as Faith shut down one of her ideas, she was like, "You're just the same as Buffy." You want to be in charge, Kennedy. That's the real issue going on here. You're never going to be in charge. You shit. Sit down. Shut up. That's what they needed to say to her. But yeah, I feel sorry for her fictional parents. Anyway, Kennedy, she's fine. And the only potential I really, really liked was Amanda, and they killed her at the end. So, sad times all around with the potentials, basically. The idea of them, I think, was infinitely better than the characters themselves. I think they just needed a bit more work done to them, and they all needed to be introduced in a similar way that Amanda was, to actually feel an emotional connection to them. But there wasn't time for that, I guess, given that, we kind of, when we properly delved into the potentials and their stuff, we were about halfway through the season, weren't we? So maybe this wasn't the time, sadly. Then Andrew. My goodness, this is definitely going to be a bit of a change from when I talked about Andrew last season. I bloody loved Andrew this season. He had some really funny moments. I loved that he came to terms with the fact that he did some horrible shit. He was trying to own it, trying to make up for it in any way he could, trying to fit in with someone, still a bit of a nerd. But I think because there's only one character making that, "oh, I'm a nerd" jokes instead of 3 for an entire season, I think the jokes worked infinitely better this season with Andrew. I think the actor's name's Tom Link, I think. He was really good this season. It was great that he got to show off more of a range with Andrew's kind of guilt and everything. The pairing of him and Spike, bloody hilarious. I also love the pairing of him and Anya. And much like a lot of characters in the show, Andrew clearly has a lot of like self-esteem issues and everything that he still needs to work on. But hopefully he does have the time to work on them now, because he survived the battle. And the fact that he was fully prepared to die in that final battle, and he was actually kind of like questioning, like, how did I survive that at the end? I think he kind of felt bad that Anya died, but he didn't. Just shows his growth and how far he came. And, you know, an episode like Storyteller, when he really has to face what he did, he was willing to just die for what he did. No, this season did wonders for him. Easily could have just like not been in this season, and they could have just completely cast him out altogether. But actually, ultimately, I think it was a great thing that they brought him back into it. It cost Jonathan's life to start this journey for him, granted. But yeah, he was a really fun, light-hearted addition to the season. When the times we needed more lightheartedness, I think Andrew was there to bring that. I think that was a good call to have him there. And he was infinitely more tolerable just on his own, as opposed to when he was part of the trio. Because I suppose, you know, the trio, it was the point that they all brought out the worst in each other. And that's why they were so dangerous. But for me, that wasn't entertaining or enjoyable as an arc. So I was like, no. So they actually gave him a lot of room to breathe in this one. The Storyteller episode all around him as well. Something a bit different. And yeah, he brought a different vibe and energy, I think, to the house. And I liked how he became kind of desperate for attention and approval in the end. That came from a place of him just, you know, feeling guilty about what he did. So I loved everything with Andrew overall this season. Can't believe I'm saying it, but I actually really enjoyed his character by the end of the show. Yeah, really great addition to season 7, which is a balmy thing to think that I would say, but there we go. So that was Andrew. Then Faith. Very excited when she came back in Angel, and then was clearly headed into Sunnydale. And I loved having her back. I feel like her stint on Angel last season really got her ready to be back in Buffy, to like give her like the tools she needed to be a leader. I feel like I'm just going to repeat myself a lot in terms of when I talked about Faith in the Angel season 4 review. So if I've missed anything out about Faith here, I'll obviously I would have talked about it there. But yeah, she's just such an interesting, fun, flawed character. I liked her finally understanding what Buffy kind of always been going through as the Slayer and as the leader, everything that was kind of thrust upon her. Really dealing with that, her realising how lonely it was to be the Slayer, and then being freed of it at the same time as Buffy, because she was like all down with the plan to awaken all the potentials, which I really liked. You know, she didn't ask to be made the leader, but she was kind of put into that position. She tried her best, still mistakes were made, not just helped to understand the Buffy situation even better. She shut down Kennedy once or twice, which I enjoyed. And I just like her take no shit attitude, really. And the fact that she, again, is working on herself, and she's working to redeem and change her ways. After, you know, the last time she was on Buffy, for instance, she didn't do some particularly nice things. So to see her kind of come back, make amends with it, you know, stand up to the vision of the mayor, and kind of say goodbye to that side of herself, that version of herself that no longer exists, and really kind of move forward. Struck up a really nice bond with Robin as well. Just loved everything they kind of had going on with Faith. Just another really fun character. I'm glad she came back before the show was done. And yeah, I really love Faith and the complexities behind her. She has some really great stuff to do, and I'm sure there's more to it that I could say. But I would have said it in the Angel review, I'd have said it in the Buffy Season 3 review, I'd have said it in any episode reactions that she's featured in as well. You know, I think we really would be here for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours if I went into every single little detail and episodic examples of every character in these reviews. I just tried to kind of summarise it as best I can, instead of doing like individual character analysis like I do in the individual reactions. So yeah, Faith, so glad she came back. Love her to pieces. Love Eliza in the role. They did some great stuff with her in these final 5 episodes. I really appreciate that they brought her back. So she was great. Caleb, I loved having Nathan Fillion on the show. He was really great in the part. An interesting kind of changed up villain for the final few episodes of the show. A good representative of the first. I like the history behind him in the first. And just what an awful sexist pig he was, essentially. Just really crazy, but an interesting threat, both physically and psychologically. I feel like there was something very twisted and sinister to him that made him stand out a bit. And I think they just needed an agent of the first that they could physically beat up and have a fight with, and cut in half by the end. I do feel like he was disposed of a bit too quickly and easily after all that build up. I do think he kind of went out as a bit of a very much like Mr. Trick in season 3, but overall I enjoyed what Caleb brought to the final little bit of the show. Just some interesting creepiness, and I thought Nathan portrayed him really well. And you often get characters that are, I guess, unhinged in a way. I feel like he was particularly unhinged, just like the vampire guy in Helpless was. Just kind of a unique brand of unhinged villainy that I think Caleb brought in a very interesting way to this season. So I really enjoyed him. And then the first, as a whole, as a villain, I've already said, it just, for some reason, I don't know, I can't explain it, but it just feels right to me that they were the villains of the final season. I really enjoy them being able to shape and change into all these dead people. And again, they had like the Bringers and Caleb, so they can have a physical threat, but also they were building up the threat of them because they could like manipulate people into killing themselves, for instance, and taunting people, like using Spike against everyone, taunting Buffy in the final battle and everything. Just a really kind of unique idea for a villain, I think, and the idea that they are the first evil and they're that like first thing to exist or whatever it was. That's a really interesting history to unpack there. And I think like exactly like how they manipulated events and kind of why they chose exactly now, like how they used Buffy's death or resurrection or something to affect the Slayer bloodline, exactly what they had against the Slayer bloodline. I'm not sure if I ever completely got it or understood it in a way. I feel like I need to rewatch them, see if I missed stuff there. But still, as villains for the season, I thought they were really effective. I think it was because there's so much uniqueness to them and they can have so many faces. They are literally two-faced, if they want it to be anyway. Because they can do so much ability-wise, they were a great choice to, I think, carry like a 22-episode season. Because we did see them in the first episode, obviously, because they were taunting Spike at the end as all the big bads. So yeah, I really loved them as the villains this season. I thought they were really, really interesting. And yeah, it just sat right with me that we revisit the first from season 3. So good stuff with that. And then Cassie, I thought we should give her a bit of a shout because I thought the actress was fantastic, and we did see her kind of come back through the first in Conversations with Dead People as well. But as far as side characters go, I think she had one of the saddest stories this season. I got really invested in her episode, Help, and just the idea that she was like convinced she was going to die, and we thought it was going to be this weird supernatural like cult thing, but it was just a heart condition or something. I think it was in the end, wasn't it? That was really sad, but she just seemed like so sweet and wholesome. And then to see a completely different shift to Cassie when she kind of took the form as the first, well, the first took the form of her, I guess, to confront Willow. I just liked all the different kind of things with that. And yeah, just some of the foreshadowing I think they also used with like her cryptic visions in Help as well. It was just one of the more unique, I think, kind of side student characters that wasn't a potential that we had in the show in general. And yeah, I had an instant attachment to her. I think just because I think the actress was really good. But yeah, Cassie was a fun, tragic addition, and it was cool to kind of see the first use her form and see a different side to her as well. But I thought I'd just shout her out because I think technically she's kind of a one-off character because she only is in Help, and then it was like the first using her body or whatever in episode 7. So as far as like a one-episode character goes, I do think she's one of the more interesting ones this season. And her story and everything in that episode really did stick with me. Even though that was quite fairly early on in season 7, by the end I'm still like, oh, poor Cassie. So I'm a show, and the character had a pretty decent impact on me, so I really enjoyed her. Then a quick shout out to the Gnarl, I think it was called, from Same Time, Same Place. I do think that's one of the best like one-off demon-y villains we've had in Buffy. Even now, just the thought of it scuttling around and like peeling off the flesh and eating it, the idea behind how it kills its victims and stuff is just so horrible. And the actor who played them was so good and creepy, and the design was wonderful. One of the most effective, I think, one-off baddies we had. Genuinely up there in terms of creepiness with like the Gentleman and the Kinder Egg for me in terms of like one-off Buffy villains. Just gross. But a really great idea and concept, really dark, and yeah, that still really sticks with me, the Gnarl. Fantastic kind of concept, and the execution of it I thought was also done superbly well. Helps that it wasn't just like a CGI kind of thing that they had to rely on. It was, practical costume stuff, just brilliantly brought to life by the writing and the acting, and one of the standout villains, not just of season 7 for me, but probably of the entire show. It really, really got under my skin, quite literally if you're one of his victims, I suppose, because he peeled it off. But yeah, really unique villain that I thought I wanted to give a shout out to, just because it was so horrible and creepy. Then we have Jonathan. I thought, again, just because he's been a bit of a big deal since season 1 of the show, I thought I'd mention him, even though we only really saw him properly for a few minutes before he was stabbed and killed, and then we saw him again as the first kind of taunting Andrew. I guess a sad ending to Jonathan's story, but given how season 6 went, I can't say I was that sad to see him go, I'll be honest. I know a lot of people love Jonathan, and I didn't mind him, and I kind of felt sorry for him in Earshot and in Superstar. But honestly, what they did with him in season 6 and the trio and everything kind of undermined all that for me. And I was like, well, okay, he still went down the dark path anyway. He's had chances to change and he didn't. And that's just, I didn't really like that that's where his character ended up going. Maybe if it had been like he had killed Andrew instead, first, like swapped what Andrew and Jonathan would do in season 7, that could have really helped, did wonders for Andrew's character in my eyes. That probably would have redeemed Jonathan in my eyes as well. But that wasn't the way around it ended up being. So it is kind of a sad ending to Jonathan's story, the fact that he was just like sacrificed like that. Ultimately for nothing as well. Because it was like, oh, there's not enough blood. Whoopsie. It was all for now. But yeah, seeing him again, I guess it's a nice way to bring a finality to the character. But I can't say I was too sad to see him ultimately go, just because season 6 really did taint the character for me, if I'm honest. So it is what it is. And to also see Warren, if we're talking about Jonathan at the same time, we saw him a lot, when he was Willow, when he was the first, stuff like that. Just testament to the actor. He just needs to appear on screen. I'm like, oh, fuck you. I think Warren was like quite a dangerous villain on his own, I think. But it made sense that they could see him again, especially he was kind of like haunting Andrew and stuff, because Andrew kind of, I think, had some pretty strong feelings for Warren in season 6. Made sense that the first would literally use the most evil man alive and take the form of him. So yeah, seeing him again as well, I guess kind of nice epilogues to the trio in season 6 with Jonathan kind of dying and Warren being used through the first, and Andrew kind of having a big redemption kind of story, at least in my eyes. So that was all very well and good. We had Travers and the council. Yeah, I mean, they went around for long because they got blown up by Caleb. That was a nice reveal as well. I enjoyed that. But I thought, just because we got a reappearance of him, it was a nice way of rounding off. And again, that was another big deal, I think. Like, well, the show's really coming to an end because they killed off the Watchers Council. So I thought that was a really interesting big moment, I guess, for the show. Ultimately, I don't feel like it had the impact it could have done. But still, it was a fun kind of thing to see him again. He wasn't a particularly pleasant person. I was like, oh, God. You know, the council weren't great anyway. Liam Catterson will tell you all about that. Just ask him about the Watchers Council. But regardless, an interesting development and finality to him. And I just thought we'd give him a shout out just to see him again. And then Clem, we only saw him a couple of times this season, but I like the design of him. I thought he was like all weird and floppy, and he's just a wholesome, nice demon. I like it when there's a nice demon, and Clem was a nice example of that. And last season as well. And to see him make a few more appearances here, help out when he could. You know, he had a nice little goodbye scene as well when he left Sunnydale. I'm sure he's living his best life somewhere. Just chilling out, probably betting on kittens and stuff. But yeah, I always enjoy kind of secondary demon characters that are actually quite nice. And Clem's one of the top examples of that for me. I liked, you know, the camaraderie he had with Spike for a while, and the respect he ended up having for Buffy and everything. It was just a nice, fun, light-hearted character to have again. So I enjoyed Clem. I've written a name down here, and I'll be honest, I've completely forgotten who this is. So let's just look them up and see. Okay. I knew there was a reason for it. Holden is who I was writing down. I was like, I'll remember who that is by the time I get to it, because obviously I've been talking for a long time at this point. I had forgotten. Holden, who is the vampire that Buffy was talking to in Conversations with Dead People. I wanted to give him a shout out because I thought that was a really interesting character, a really great performance by the actor. I like that it kind of gave him a past with Buffy, and they could talk things through about, you know, their lives and how things had changed and the different directions their lives had gone in. I just thought it was a great kind of addition to, you know, showcase again how Buffy's life has changed and how far she's come in comparison to the other conversations with dead people that was going on in that episode. I thought it was a nice kind of twist to see the Slayer and the vampire just sit down and have a chat. Ultimately, you know, they still need to kill him, but really great kind of performance and a fun twist of a character, you know, that's a vampire with Buffy that isn't just like a romantic one like Angel and Spike. So yeah, I thought I'd give him a shout out as well because I thought he was a lot of fun. Then I think Anne is the name of Spike's mother, or William's mother, I should probably say, in the flashbacks. I just thought, you know, the backstory with her being quite sickly and stuff, and then when she became a vampire, all the horrible things she was kind of saying to Spike, I liked the kind of twist with that, and then Spike ended up actually like killing her, and she was like, oh, well, now I'm free, I don't need to be burdened with my awful son, I hate you. It's a very dark twist, and I liked getting a glimpse into like Spike's upbringing and stuff, and actually meeting his mother. Just again, more so, just like with Holden, her presence was more so, I think, helped, you know, kind of develop another main character, like Spike in this case. But I thought she was an interesting addition to like some flashbacks, and just to find out, you know, the first vampire Spike's side and everything, and how it all played out. And a lot of that episode that she was in kind of tied back to like mothers and their connection with their kids. So I thought she was a great way of kind of showing that. And then Amy, I think we only saw her in one episode this season, but I did like that they revisited her, even though I hate her. But she's very bad influence on Willow last season, and then coming into this season, I've changed my ways. I'm better now. I'm part of this club, and we're all so good. And actually, no, I still hate you. Here's a hex. Kind of, I did like has she changed? Has she not? They had going on. Ultimately, she just remained kind of a bitter, awful person. Very much her mother's daughter in the end, it would seem, which I guess is a interesting arc. It would have been fun to see maybe a change for her, but a lot of characters were getting redeemed in season 7. I quite like that Amy just stayed being a bit of a bitch, and to see the kind of darker path she went down. And she was just jealous of all the power that Willow had and the fact that she'd been forgiven. Again, it comes down to like the insecurity I think Amy has and the love she wished she had in her life. She just didn't. So it's kind of sad in a way. But again, I'm just like, you leave Willow alone. She can make amends, you can too, but you're not putting in the effort. So yeah, to see her again, it was again a nice kind of epilogue to the big events with Willow and her in season 6. And a way of saying, I guess, some things never change, some people will not change and can't be changed, which I guess is a good message to have in a season where Willow is redeeming herself, Spike's redeeming herself, Andrew's redeeming herself, all of that jazz. So I guess it made a lot of sense that she would just be someone who hasn't changed her ways. So I quite like what she brought from a standpoint of that in the season. I kind of wrote Joyce down just because I miss Joyce, and we didn't really see her this season, because I think whenever we did see her, it was the first kind of using her image or something, I think. But I thought the fact that, the first through Joyce was trying to kind of pin Buffy and Dawn against each other, I liked that her presence was there, just because, to see Christine again, she was a big part of the show in the early seasons. I really enjoyed that, because, it's the final season. It was great to see Christine come back again. For a couple more appearances to haunt both Dawn and Buffy, I think she did. But the fact that she did make that appearance and her form was used to kind of try and turn sisters against sisters and everything, plant some seeds of doubt about Buffy in Dawn's mind, it was a nice showcase of how meaningful and impactful Joyce was to Dawn and Buffy's lives, in the fact that if anyone was going to convince them to maybe turn on each other or anything, it's going to be Joyce herself. It made a lot of sense, and it was a nice showcase of what Joyce meant to those two girls and the impact she could have on their lives and what she had on the show. And I like that she continued to have an impact on the show even after her biggest impact on the show, which was probably dying, which is kind of sad in terms of a character. The fact that, the most memorable thing Joyce did was die, but the fact that she still made some other appearances, and her legacy did kind of continue in the show for a bit. I quite like that. I thought it was kind of wholesome, and to see her face again, even if it was for evil purposes, in this last season was really nice. So I liked that. And then Angel, I guess we should talk about last, but by no means least. Him popping up in episode 21 and a bit in 22. Bloody loved. It only felt right that he'd come back because the show neared the end, and I loved the interactions and the promise of a potential future between him and Buffy. I wasn't all about like the kiss and the romantic side of things, because I do feel like they've moved on from that. It felt a bit like backtracking with the character, but since it was the end of the show, it made sense they would address like such a big important relationship in the show. And I do enjoy seeing kind of petty 12-year-old side Angel when he's like a bit jealous, which Buffy always brought out in him, talking about the cookie dough conversation and stuff. I love that he's just like sitting back relaxing, like, oh, Buffy's going to kick your ass, Caleb, I'm going to enjoy this fight. I liked that a lot. And his entrance was pretty badass. I like that he then provided the necklacey thing that Spike ended up using, and he was offering himself like, I'm going to wear this and fight, not even knowing what he would have done, and probably for the best that he didn't, because then Angel would have been cancelled. Cancelled just a season sooner anyway. So yeah, I enjoyed those aspects of it, even if I wasn't big on like pushing the Bangel stuff again, when I feel like we've moved on. But we needed to have David back in the show, I think, especially because he wasn't in season 6 either. And it was great to see Angel for a couple more appearances. And I think they left the Bangel kind of thing, very much out in the open. Could happen one day, could not, but there is hope for it, if nothing else, one day. I like that kind of promise of a future, or a promise of not, at least like being in each other's lives, and the fact that Angel still very much cared about Buffy and the people of Sunnydale years after he'd left. That was a really nice kind of round off to, you know, his first appearance in a little while, and a round off to his final appearance on the show. The fact they like walked off into the distance just the same way he kind of exited at the end of season 3. Nice kind of callback with that, and it's just great to see him interacting. I would have liked to have seen him interact with all of the Buffy lot, but if he needed to interact with just one person, it had to be Buffy herself, didn't it? So it was great to see him as well, and the character's come on leaps and bounds from when he was a main character in Buffy anyway, so to see him with all that growth and everything, great showcase of how far he's come in his own show. So yeah, I love seeing him again. And I believe those are all the big kind of characters in the season I wanted to discuss. Again, it's kind of a case where there's so many characters, it would take forever to kind of go through all the individual ones that appeared, but those are the ones that really stuck out to me in terms of the ones I thought needed to be talked about in terms of plot, or ones I just liked seeing again, ones that really stood out to me, even if they're like one-offs. So yes, I thought I'd highlight some of those, but now we're going to talk about some of the themes I picked up on this season. Okay, so in terms of some themes for season 7, I do feel like season 7's themes really did stand out to me in like a major way. I feel like they've really got across some really great ones this season, and did a great job at kind of sowing the seeds for them consistently throughout the season. I could think of loads of examples for every single one, so I think this, season 7 was very rich, I think, in storytelling in terms of the themes, which I really like. It's kind of a goldmine. So I've got a few, obviously. I probably wouldn't have got every single theme that there is. There's probably some obvious ones I've missed. There might be some not so obvious ones that you guys have thought of over the years that I haven't thought of yet. And I've got a few examples for each one, as always. Not every single example I could think of, because that would just take a while. But yeah, let's go through some of these. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the first big one, I think, is the idea of destiny. So we have Buffy and the potential Slayers. And like, it was always their destiny to fight this fight, potentially just die young. The next one's called One at a Time, blah, 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 blah. They kind of take destiny in their own hands, completely redefine what it was always about. And now they kind of change their destiny so that they can all kind of do their own thing if they need to and just be free, which I really love. Willow and her kind of final spell in the final episode, it kind of felt like it was her destiny to get to this point, and the fact that, she'd become this all-powerful witch, gone too far with it, kind of had to renegotiate how to do it in a more, meaningful, good way, put her perfectly in this position where she needed to cast this spell to awaken all the potential Slayers. So that kind of felt like destiny in a way. Spike and getting the necklacey thing that he wore, it felt like, destiny kind of made it so he got his soul back so he could kind of wield that thing, ultimately help save the day, even if it cost his own life. And also Cassie, the fact that she knew her destiny was to die in a week or whatever it was, and she made some predictions about the future as well, all of which came true. And there was no escaping that. They thought they'd kind of freed her from the cult, and they're like, oh, we saved her from the death, but then it was like a heart defect or something. It was her destiny to just die there anyway. Very sad. But that just ties into that theme. The idea of potential is another theme, I would say. Kind of an obvious one. Doesn't make me sound too smart. The potentials. Literally, the clues in the name. They have the potential to be Slayers. They have the potential to be greater. They have the potential to be strong and stand up and fight for what's right. The kind of the potential behind the first, like the danger they had, like they could potentially be any number of people that they could use to haunt everyone. So the kind of potential, like, oh, what are they going to do next? The very the happy, optimistic ending of the show, I think, was like they all have the potential to lead some great lives next. They can do anything they want with their lives. There's a lot of potential there. Then Dawn, kind of thinking she was the potential, and then she kind of had to shift that energy into something else, and she now still has the potential to be extraordinary, even if she's not a potential Slayer. And then also Willow, I guess, as well. She was kind of fearing the potential to turn to Dark Willow again, but she also had the potential to be the most powerful witch of all, and she kind of took it, and it worked out fairly well. So there was that. Another theme is redemption and recovery. I've kind of put them together because Willow's a big example of that. She needs to redeem from the events of season 6 and recover from them as well. I think a lot of redemption needs the recovery period as well. You need to recover from it yourself and deal with it yourself in order to move forward and redeem yourself. So we have like Spike very much redeeming himself for his actions last season, moving forward from that. Buffy recovering from, you know, a lot happening to her in season 6. Andrew redeeming himself. Anya and Xander recovering from their kind of big breakup and her becoming a vengeance demon again, everything with that, kind of having to deal with the after effect of all those kind of heartbreaking things for them in season 6. And then another one would be like magic and the highs and lows of magic. So the various spells with Willow, like the very last one, which obviously awakened all the potentials. Good. Her arrived at Black Slaydale. She's invisible. Bad. So we had a few kind of moments of that, and Kennedy keep hammering it home that any minute you could turn evil again if you cast this spell. Thanks, Kennedy, for all your help. And Amy with her hex, that's kind of a magical low more than anything. And the fact that, Warren then, where it became Warren for a bit, potentially turning into him in a sense, like kind of a low point with magic. And RJ and his like magical, like sacred cursed jacket-y thing. That's kind of a high and low of magic altogether, because it's not the best thing. It's kind of manipulative that it was being used for that. But it was also kind of quite a light-hearted episode at times, and it was kind of used more for comical effect, so you could argue that as a high. Then another theme is legacy. So, the legacy of the Slayers kind of lives in all of them now. They all have the potential to be a great Slayer. So the legacy of the long line of Slayers that have come before can kind of live on with all this new lot that's been awakened. The legacy of Andrew and the trio, to an extent. Andrew kind of living on from what the trio did, kind of making amends for that. He kind of has to live with it. Robin, very much living in the shadow of his mother's death and trying to kind of live on in her legacy. I think fighting the good fight for her is his way of honouring her legacy as well. And this is kind of a more meta example, I guess, of the show, but the show's legacy itself, in the fact that we saw the big bads again through the first this season, and the first, appearing in season 3, and a lot of characters coming back from previous seasons. It's like the legacy of the show is very much kind of referenced this season multiple times. And then another theme is mentors and leaders. So Giles, a big one there. He's kind of a mentor and a leader for Willow at the start of the season, and to Buffy to an extent, maybe not so much as previous seasons, but still there was that debate. Buffy and Faith kind of stepping up to be mentors to the potentials and leaders to them as well. And Buffy also had to become like a mentor role when she became a counsellor at the school. The first kind of appearing as the mayor and their interactions with Faith, because he was kind of a big mentor to Faith in season 3, so I like that they revisited that relationship. And I guess Robin again, the fact that he could be seen as somewhat of a mentor to the potentials, and he's in a leadership role through being the principal at the school. Then another theme is power. The very first episode of the season ended with the first as Buffy saying it's about power. They kind of made it very clear there. This whole season was about, who's going to come out on top. The first are very powerful. Willow's very powerful. Buffy's very powerful. Spike's very powerful. Arnie's very powerful. There was a lot of power plays throughout the season. There's a lot of big deal about, you know, losing yourself in your powers, losing control of your powers, like Anya as a vengeance demon, having to like kill those people, and like oh god, we have to kill Anya now, and Willow being scared of, you know, turning evil again with her power. You know, Faith and Buffy having the power of the Slayer, and then passing that on to all the other potentials. Also, Dawn's lack of power, I think, is also a big deal, and that kind of feeds into that theme in a kind of, you know, an anti-theme, I guess. The fact that, you know, they made a big deal that she doesn't have powers, and she discovered that she didn't have powers, but she's still extraordinary. She still is powerful, just without powers. I thought that was an interesting way of feeding into that theme as well. And then another one is acceptance, I would say. Buffy and the Potentials kind of accepting what they need to do to win the battle, accepting their roles as the Slayers, accepting their new roles when everyone's been awakened, and accepting their new way of life there. Xander and Anya kind of accepting that their relationship's over, moving forward from that. Andrew coming to terms with his guilt, accepting what he did was bad when he thought Buffy was about to like kill him. He was very accepting of his fate in the final battle as well, prepared to die, everything with that. Spike also accepting the things he did in the past, accepting his end as well in the final battle, accepting that he was going to die, and going out curious as to see how it all ends. Dawn accepting that she doesn't have any powers, Xander accepting that he doesn't have any powers, but they could still be useful through it, accepting their roles regardless. Faith kind of accepting she's someone else now, accepting the new version of herself, accepting that she did make, you know, bad choices in the past and she is moving forward. Robin accepting, you know, what happened to his mum and coming to terms with the fact that Spike killed her and having to make amends with that and accepting that, moving forward from that. Caleb kind of accepting these powers from the first in a more twisted version of that theme, I guess. And earlier in the season, you know, Willow having to accept Tara's death and saying goodbye to her, you know, that scene at the grave and everything early in the season. Oh boy. So just having to accept and move on from that. And then another theme is death. Good old death. Love death. Obviously one's Spike and Anya. They died. Self-explanatory. The first themselves and the visions, the people they kind of show themselves as, are all dead. So that's very much death is literally haunting them the entire season. Willow kind of becoming Warren. You know, she had to deal with the death of Tara. Everything with that. She kind of became the person that she killed. You know, death very much kind of consuming her in that way. And Andrew killing Jonathan, death there as well. It's kind of a significant one. That kind of changed a lot up. So yeah, pretty big deal, basically. And then the final theme that I've thought of, for now at least, for the season is the idea of empowerment. Because I thought the finale very much is all about that. Because all, you know, Buffy, the Potentials, all the Slayers are kind of empowered, literally. And, you know, they can all fight back and do better now. You know, whether or not some of those people would actually want that, I guess, is one thing, you know, something else entirely, and there's a bit of a debate about that, it would seem, and fair enough. I hadn't really considered that, like, what if people, like, those are these little girls that don't want to be the Slayer suddenly have the Slayer's powers? I suppose they have the powers, but they don't necessarily need to have the duty, just because there's so many. But yeah, I like the kind of idea of the empowerment, fighting back that the finale gave them. Willow literally is empowered because, you know, she learned to properly use magic for good again. And then again, Dawn and Xander, a lack of empowerment, but that still gives them their superpowers. You know, Dawn was saying like, oh, maybe that's your power, you can see. Ironic. Stuff like that. So those are just a few examples, and those are like some of the key themes I picked up on this season. But again, probably not every single theme I had thought of as the season was progressing. I've probably forgotten a few because that was a while ago. And, you know, there's not every single example I could think of for those, but just to be a bit more concise. But let me know what themes you may have picked up on in Season 7 in the years or months, whatever, since you've seen it yourself. But yeah, those are some of the key ones that I kind of thought of. And now we get to my favourite bit, where we talk about our favourite episodes of the season. And for this first part, we kind of go through all the episodes that you guys voted for. So how it works, as always, was I did a post in my community tab. I asked you guys to give me your favourite 3 episodes of the season. I tied it all up. It took a very long time. There was like 188 votes or something this time around. So thank you to everyone who kind of commented on that post. And yeah, I kind of count them all up, and then we can see what, as like a general consensus from people who watch my reactions, you know, what your favourite episodes are compared to mine. And I must say, fairly bloody similar this time. We really are of the same mind, I think, in terms of our favourite episodes. And there's only one episode in the entire season 7 that didn't get a single vote. So again, there is something for everyone in this season, which I enjoyed. But like I was mentioning earlier, like the middle kind of group of episodes is very much like the second half and like the middle of this list. So again, it's not like any of that portion like super like jumps out, I think. But there are quite some significant jumps as we go up your guys' votes, and the gap between first and second place is literally 2 votes. It's so close. So some very close calls and some very, very good episodes in season 7, as there is in every season of Buffy. But yeah, thank you to everyone who voted and commented on the post. Again, I always ask for 3. I need to keep it consistent, otherwise it's not fair then for the poll. So if you gave me more than 3 episodes, if you gave me less, I didn't count it. I think there's only like a couple that I couldn't count this time, so pretty damn good. And yes, let's just get right into it, I suppose. So you can narrow it down to 16 slots, and 16th and last place was First Date, which didn't get any votes. F in the chat for First Date. And then joint 15th was Bring on the Night, Get It Done, and Empty Places, which all got 1 vote. 14th was The Killer in Me and End of Days, which got 2 votes. I'm surprised End of Days didn't do better, actually. 13th place was Beneath You, Sleeper, and Never Leave Me. They all got 3 votes. 12th place was Potential, which got 4 votes. Joint 11th was Lessons and Him, which got 5 votes. And then top 10, 10th is Showtime with 12 votes. 9 is Help with 17 votes. 8th place is Touched with 20 votes. 7th place is Dirty Girls with 21 votes. 6th place, this actually really surprised me. I didn't realise just how popular this episode was, but 6th was Same Time, Same Place, which got 26 votes. So, you know, getting a few more gaps in between numbers now. And then 5th place was Lies My Parents Told Me with 45 votes. So that's a 19 vote gap there. So getting some more gaps. 4th place was Storyteller with 57 votes. 3rd place, a lot of people kind of, it was funny, like a lot of people when they commented on the post, they were like, I want to give some love for this one because I feel like it's underappreciated. And then it ends up getting 3rd place, which is Selfless, which got 83 votes. And that did very bloody well. That's nearly 30 whole votes difference between 3rd and 4th place. And then 2nd place, again, this was very, very close, but 2nd place was Chosen, obviously the very last episode, which got 106 votes. Out of 188 comments, 106 of you had Chosen in there. So that's pretty damn good going. And then 1st place, the only one that's left. It was my prediction that this was going to win based on the first few. I normally make a guess when I go through the first few comments and do the tally marks and stuff. I'm like, well, I think this one's going to win. And it did win, but it was very close. Like I said, 2 votes in it. Number 1 is Conversations with Dead People, which got 108 votes. So only 2 ahead of Chosen. So yeah, some really strong episodes in there. And I do feel like those top episodes, they kind of changed things up. They did a bit different. You know, Storyteller was a different kind of feel. Conversations with Dead People was a bit different. Chosen is the last episode of the show. Selfless, you know, Anu-centric, which you don't get that often. And we had another musical number in it and stuff. You know, there's some different things about it, which I think helped make them stand out from the crowd from that kind of period in the middle of the season I was talking about. It seemed to all blend together. And based on your votes, it seems like, you know, that may be a common thing. It's not that the episodes are bad, they're maybe just not quite, there's no oomph to them, you know? So that's what you guys voted for. Thank you so much to everyone who ever put a comment on one of these posts. because that was obviously the last Buffy vote we're going to be doing. But yes, I thought that was very interesting, and I do feel like in terms of what you guys voted for to mine, it is literally identical apart from 2, but it's the same episodes. I've just swapped them around in the order, so we are actually in full agreement of our top 5 episodes for season 7. And I don't know if that's ever happened before, that my top 5 and your top 5, while the order's different, the episodes are exactly the same. I don't know if that's happened before, but yeah, I guess now we get into my top 5. Okay, so I've already mentioned, we kind of were identical in what our favourite episodes were this season. Just the order was slightly different, but I think we're going to see straight away that difference. Yes, we are. So basically, your guys' 4th and 5th place, for me, I swapped them round. So my top 5, well, my honourable mention, first of all, is Same Time, Same Place. I really love that episode. Very, very close to making it in, mainly because of Linnell and the focus on Willow, obviously. I also want to throw a shout out to Potential. It was never going to make my top 5 because I love the Xander and Dawn scene at the end, but the rest of the episode's like, it's fine. So it wasn't like a huge standout episode, like consistently good, like Same Time, Same Place was for me. But you guys also had Same Time, Same Place in 6th, which is what it is for me as well. So again, we're in total agreement there, which is kind of interesting. But those are my honourable mentions. But 5th place for me is Storyteller. I loved how they kind of did something a bit different, having it through Andrew's lens, quite literally at times. Kind of seeing, what was going on from his point of view, I thought was really, really interesting. Very fun kind of idea. I think there's a lot of humour in it at times. I like that they really addressed Andrew's guilt and him really coming to terms with what he did in season 6 and showcasing how far he'd grown and changed and how much he wanted to be better. I just really, really enjoyed that, and how they framed it in a different style. And while the episode was very, very funny and lighthearted for a lot of the time, it ended on a very bleak note with Andrew being like, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to survive this. Maybe I shouldn't, which I thought was, again, a tonal shift that I think Buffy kind of pulls off in a way a lot of shows just couldn't. That's because Buffy is capable of being so many different themes and so many different genres and stuff. So yeah, I loved Storyteller. I thought it was a very unique kind of episode. One of the more unique episodes of this season. So of course it's going to stand out to me. Then number 4 for me in my top 5 is Lies My Parents Told Me. So we just swapped those two around with your guys' top 5 to mine. Loved finally addressing, what was going on with Robin and his grudge against Spike, showcasing, what went down with that. Flashbacks to Spike and his mum, and seeing Drusilla, everything with that. Some really interesting insights there, and the fact that there was so much rivalry going on between Spike and Robin in that episode, but there's also some similarities, and they kept linking those two characters up in their backstories and everything. Really, really interesting. I like that, because just if circumstances had been completely different, those two would have actually gotten along quite well. I think that's such an interesting idea. So I loved everything with that. And the shenanigans of Robin and Giles teaming up to potentially take Spike out, because I think he could have been a danger. Buffy finding out, stopping Robin, being like, bitch please, you're not doing that again. If it comes down to it, I'll let Spike kill you. And then the very sassy scene with Giles at the end where she's like, you told me everything I need to know. Kind of like very kind of a sad ending, really, given that I love the Buffy and Giles bond, but still a bit like a holy moly moment. And it was just a very intense episode from start to finish, and I really enjoyed kind of what they did with it. And then this isn't going to be a surprise to you now, because my top 3 is exactly the same as your top 3. So 3rd place for me is Selfless. Love me some Anya-centric episodes. I like that we got another musical number in there. I thought that was a bit different and quite fun. The properly addressing everything that Anya was still dealing with after season 6, with the wedding and everything, her becoming a vengeance demon again, not quite feeling it, the conflict between her and Buffy, do we need to kill her, and yeah, her kind of coming to terms with mortality and deciding she doesn't want to be a vengeance demon. Everything with that, it was just a great kind of character piece for Anya. And the reason I think of it so funny now is because obviously we know where things end with Anya at the end of the show, it was great that we managed to still get like a big episode for her this season. That was like kind of really all about her. Seeing flashbacks to who she used to be with like the troll guy when her name was Ord, I think, or something like that. That was a really interesting backstory that we hadn't gotten before. It was just a showcase of what a wonderful addition to the show that Anya was, and a great character she was. So I really enjoyed what they did with that episode. Then second place is Chosen, the final episode of the show. Such a satisfying ending. I loved what they did with it. Obviously sad to lose Spike and Anya, but they went out nobly. I love the idea of all the potentials being awakened, and Slayers all over the world are now waking up. Some great ends to, Buffy is now free to do whatever the hell she wants. I just love that ending for her. Willow casting a spell, like all-powerful spell, and it's for good. That was great. Some lovely moments with like the core cast. It wasn't perfect because Kennedy didn't die, Verona didn't die, but I joke, of course. I don't wish anyone dead. And we've got a bit of Robin and Faith in there as well, which is a pairing I really enjoyed, and just the hopefulness of like anything can happen now. These characters can do whatever the hell they want. They are free. That ending, that final shot of Buffy just smiling as the sun kind of blazes on her on the open road ahead. Very metaphorical there and literal. Just such a lovely, hopeful, optimistic way of ending the show after everything those characters have been through. I love that so much. And then first place, again, not a surprise because it's exactly the same as you guys. My favourite episode of season 7 was Conversations with Dead People. It's the old episode 7 pattern that I've heard so much about. It's just always a good episode 7, it would seem. And this was no exception. I loved, just the concept of the episode, the conversations with dead people that were going on, the reveal that it was actually the first. I had a little punch the air moment because that was my guess after episode 1, I think. So I enjoyed that. The interactions with Willow and Cassie, everything with that, like the message from Tara, it's kind of heartbreaking but heart-wrenching as well. Joyce is, appearing to Dawn and everything with that, the warnings there. And then changing up a bit, we had Buffy talking to Holden and the connection with those two. Just a really fascinating kind of character showcase and display. It sets the stage for the rest of the season because we get the big bad reveal. So we've had a bit of teasing up to that point. So to get some proper answers about it was great. And, it propels the story forward of the entire season, which was wonderful. But we also had just some lovely performances and some lovely character dialogue between all the different things at play. Just it did feel kind of unique in a way. It felt very self-contained, very focused episode, and I really, really enjoyed what they did with it. And yeah, easily my favourite episode of this season, just really kind of unique. And watching my reaction back and seeing my afterthoughts, I was really buzzed after this. Like, oh yeah, this was really good. This is my favourite episode of the season so far. And that was the passion that I didn't have in like every episode of season 7 afterwards, even though I enjoyed them all. There was something clearly quite special that I connected with Conversations with Dead People, and you guys clearly did too, because it won the day. And I do like that as we come to the end of the Buffy journey with season 7. While the order was only a little bit different, my top 5 was exactly the same as your top 5. I thought that's kind of neat. I like that a lot. I'm not sure if that's actually happened before, but that's really good. I'm very, very happy with how that all turned out. And again, it's nice to kind of celebrate some wonderful, wonderful episodes that season 7 had. It's a really, really great, unique kind of stuff this season. And even though, I've mentioned a lot about you kind of merging together a bit in the middle of the episodes, and it was just like there weren't as many like, ooh, boom, oomphy moments this season. It's not like there weren't any, because the top 5 kind of proved that season 7 did still do some really clever, inventive, cool things. And I really loved all those 5 episodes for it. And more, obviously, because I had honourable mentions. So, yeah, I did find it quite difficult to choose this top 5 initially. Because of, like, those episodes kind of merging together a bit in my mind. I was like, oh, what happened there? And so I had to watch them all back. And then I made my list. And then I kind of counted all your guys' votes. And I was like, oh my God, it's the same top 5. And that kind of made me feel a bit better about my choices as well. I was like, is this right? I don't know if I'm right here. So obviously I didn't like remember everything about every single episode. So I'm like, what if I prefer this one more? But you know, that could change tomorrow if you ask me again, you know. But that's my top 5 for now. And yeah, a spectacle and a showcase of some really, really great things that season 7 had to offer. And normally we'd be heading to my predictions for the next season, but clearly there isn't a next season to kind of predict. I mean, there is the comics and stuff, obviously season 8 comics and stuff, but the fact that with comics, you're not, you know, beholden to shooting schedules and actor availability and location work and CGI budgets. They can literally do anything they can and want in a comic book. So there's no point predicting it because I don't think I'd get anywhere near close, and there's just no point. So that's why I'm not going to do like predictions for season 8 or anything. So yeah, I guess now we just wrap this up. And if you're still here, congratulations. But yes, we are nearly done. And there we have it, friends. We are here. That is the end of my 7th and final Buffy season review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't know how long it's been. Hopefully a bit shorter than the previous ones because we didn't have to do a whole prediction section. But who knows how long I yap for? Who cares? Because this is the last time I'm going to be yapping about Buffy quite to this extent on my channel, I would imagine. Unless we do like a Buffy live stream or rewatches and stuff, which we will be doing, to be fair. But this feels like the end of an era for sure. Wrapping up for good my like proper main reaction series. Because I never let myself start another season of Buffy or Angel until I did the reviews. So it really felt like a nice cap off. I didn't want to start another season, get caught up in that, and then be like, okay, I'm not focused on the season I just watched now, and I should do a review of. So it always made sense to wait. I definitely needed to this time because I'm in the process of moving. So I'm not actually going to be getting into Angel season 5 and probably until May time, because the next 2 weeks I'm going to be packing up the house. Obviously I won't be having as much access to internet because we're going to need to shut it off. And then I'll need to get internet in my new place. So Angel season 5 will probably be happening in May, hopefully early May, if not the middle of May for sure, in a brand new location, a brand new setup. I don't even know where yet. I am without a home. So that should be fun and exciting. But yes, that is everything for my review of Buffy season 7. What an incredible show, an incredible journey. I've really loved it. Obviously I had some ups and downs, and some spoilers and everything, but all of you who have been patient and kind and supportive and funny and witty and insightful in all your comments and likes and shares over the years, I really do appreciate it. You are very much seen, and yes, it means a lot that you've kind of stuck with me for so long and, really ran with these overly long reviews of each season. It is kind of ridiculous how long I talk for, but I'm glad you guys get some enjoyment out of it. I'm really glad you did enjoy them, and I hope you enjoyed this one because you're not getting another Buffy season review. So yes, in terms of like what's coming next, obviously Angel season 5 will be beginning in May. I'll be playing Buffy Chaos Bleeds, the video game as well. I'll be live streaming that in my new setup. I have some ideas to do like Buffy video essays. As I rewatch the show, I'm going to do like a series of video essays, I think. I kind of want to start to do that with all the shows I cover and shows I don't, but there will certainly be some Buffy ones that you can look out for. There'll be drunk rewatches of episodes from time to time, I'm sure. I'll probably get some patrons to vote on them, but it will come to YouTube as well, at least the cut down versions, and probably just some sober rewatches as well. I've had a lot of requests to do Restless, might rewatch that, so that will certainly be happening at some point. I'm sure I'll be rewatching all sorts of episodes later on down the line. And obviously I will be covering the comics on the channel. On the channel? I suddenly just turned into a different part of England. But I'm still working out exactly how I'm going to do that. I really don't know yet. So I have the motion comics for season 8, but I don't know how to get picture-in-picture for it. I'd have to work that out because I don't have a disk drive in my laptop, so I couldn't just like get the DVDs up and like rip footage from that or anything. I might have to try and find another source, or I just read them in my own time or watch them in my own time, or don't have picture-in-picture and do reactions like that, or just do straight reviews of them after I've watched them, or do live stream discussions of them or something. I don't know yet. I'm still working that out. If you have any suggestions as to how I could cover the comics, do let me know, but they'll be happening in the near future as well. I probably will wait, and I don't know. Comics will probably be easy to cover on the channel, to be fair. I can probably get them done quicker. So I might do them alongside Angel season 5, or I might wait until Angel season 5 is done. Not quite sure yet. I need to completely revamp my schedule. because once I move to a new place, I'm going to like refresh and rejig the channel up a bit. So yeah, I wanted to make sure I got this review recorded at the very least, if not uploaded, before I left this house, just because, you know, most of my Buffy journey was here, and I didn't want to do the very last thing I needed to do for Buffy on my channel be in a completely new space. It just would have felt kind of strange. So this feels like the proper ending to Buffy coverage on my channel, in terms of like the live action stuff, for sure anyway. So it feels, you know, I started watching Buffy in this house. I've watched most of Buffy in this house. Obviously there was a bit when I was at uni for a few years, I still covered the show there when I was at uni, but a lot of it has taken place here. Started here, ended here, and it felt right to get the review done here as well. So luckily I found time to do it, and all in one session as well, so very pleased with that. And yeah, that is going to be everything for this review. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. It has really meant the world. I've loved doing Buffy. It's one of my favourite shows of all time. It's completely changed my channel and my life. And yeah, everyone who's been so kind and supportive over the years, you really are appreciated. It has meant the absolute world, and I hope you've had even half as much fun as I've had covering Buffy on the channel. It's been an honour, and even though these reviews are so long and my jaw is so achy, I have enjoyed doing these reviews as well, and I'm glad you guys get some fun out of them. So that's going to be everything from me for now. If this is it, if you're not interested in the comics or anything, or stuff like that, thank you for watching my reactions and my reviews. See you for some drunk rewatches and other rewatches sometimes, hopefully, video essays, Chaos Bleed, playthroughs, all that jazz, maybe. But if not, I will see you guys for Angel Season 5, and who knows what else. Who knows what other shows I'll cover one day, and we may all meet again. But for now, that's going to be everything. Thanks for watching, and yeah, goodbye to you.